Welcome to another God of High School video, guys. We're here to tell you all about the third and final chapter of the Ragnarok mega arc in this one. So we hope you're ready for another round of high-octane action. And if you want to get up to speed with God of High School's story up to this point, we urge you to check out the previous episodes we created for you guys. With that out of the way, let's dive right into God of High School Ragnarok Part 3. Our story starts with another classic God of High School flashback where we see a young R crying on the ground while clutching a necklace with an omega-shaped pendant on it. R thinks he is talking to God and tells the deity to go away. But it's immediately revealed that the boy is right in front of Park Mu-Jin, who offers the young R to join him if he really hates God. In the present, we pick up right where we left off, as everyone in the vicinity of the ruined Knox flying fortress stares in shock when they see R bowing before Mu-Jin. R thanks Mu-Jin for everything and tells him that he's carried out all of his orders. Q witnesses this and asks Mu-Jin what R is talking about before putting the puzzle pieces together and realizing that R has been a double agent this whole time. Mu-Jin admits it and tells everyone that he was the one who sent R to spy on Knox on his behalf. In fact, Huey also realizes that this was what R was trying to tell him back in the 170th issue of God of High School. In any case, Q has a temper tantrum and confronts Mu-Jin about keeping his secret from the rest of the resistance group. As for Mu-Jin, well, he simply asks Q why he thought Mu-Jin was obligated to divulge information with his underlings. Hearing this makes Hugh realize that, yeah, it was probably too much to expect teamwork from someone as schemy as Mu-Jin. Mu-Jin then turns to R and continues to have a conversation with the spy. A moment later, everyone from Huey to the other judges are taken by surprise when they witness Mu-Jin suddenly fall to the ground after R hits him with a strike that's too fast for the eye to see. R then turns to Huey and tells the boy that he should be thanking him instead. Meanwhile, Judge B and Judge O rush to Mu-Jin to see that he's gone unconscious after R invisibly struck him. At the same time, R reiterates that he's thanking Huey for all the work he's done. That is to say, R appreciates Huey's efforts in draining the Knox King's energy, because all that's left now is to finish the job. R promptly does this by telekinetically grabbing Okwang by the neck. He then calls Sang Mandok by his more formal name, Kalios, and tells him that it's time to begin. Knox Bishop, Xiao Chen, and Romario are absolutely outraged when they see R betray their organization. They get ready to lunge at the traitor, but Mandok jumps in front of them. Romario mocks Mandok for thinking he could beat the two of them. But in true God of High School fashion, Mandok reveals their trump card and tells Romario that he never said he was going to fight the two of them alone. At the same time, Okwang finds an opening in R's defense, so he berates the traitorous bishop for turning his back on him, as the king opens his third eye and forces his way out of R's chokehold. Huey watches on and notices that R has planted a desire in his own body, as he witnesses the traitor slowly transforming. The king notices the transformation and tries to pull out the blade of Tathagata, all the while asking R if he was the one who was supposed to be the creator of desires. Okwang then prepares to clash with R using Tathagata, but he stops in his tracks when he notices that his national treasure can't be fully summoned, instead only appearing before Okwang as a broken blade. We then finally get an answer to this whole reference about desire, which is explained as R's way of stealing Okwang's powers. Because at this moment, it's revealed that R has successfully pilfered the blade of Tathagata from Okwang, which also explains why Okwang himself couldn't use it anymore. R then mocks Okwang for becoming a weakling and even calls him father. It's at this point that we finally get the big reveal that R isn't an ordinary god-hater, he's actually one of Okwang's clones. Still, Okwang gets his head in the game to meet R head-on, so he applies Bong-Chim on himself and summons his other national treasure, the Cane of the Sage. The two combatants clash and it culminates in a huge explosion. The dust settles and we see a horizontal slice gradually forming on his midsection. He then realizes that R isn't just one of his clones, this boy happens to be the very first experiment subject he had in his lab. Okwang was sure that R was a failed test subject though, and wonders how he survived after all these years, but blood gushes out of his midsection and incapacitates Okwang before he could finish the thought. R then grabs the downed Okwang by the back of the neck and sucks the life force so hard that he turns into an old geezer again. Meanwhile, Romario and Xiao Chen find themselves overwhelmed when an entire army of former Knox loyalists who are now working for R and Mandok attack them. A few moments later, the God of High School World Tournament announcer joins in on the action as he arrives with an unconscious Judge P. Mu-Jin sees him and asks R if the announcer is one of his spells too. R replies by telling Mu-Jin that he's not sure before suggesting that he should pay more attention to Judge P right now. P wakes up and tells Mu-Jin to forget about her and stick to the original plan instead. Before she could finish her sentence though, R shuts her up by driving the blade of Tathagata right through her back. Oh, and he does it twice too. Obviously this doesn't sit well with the other judges, so they instantly lunge at R the moment they see him murder P right in front of them. R easily fends them off by swinging his blade, seemingly bisecting each and every one of the judges. However, we immediately find out that's not the case. It turns out that Tathagata's blade broke the moment R swung it, and that whole image of getting bisected was just them feeling the potential force of R's attack. R wonders when exactly Okwang's blade got broken, as an entire army of hooded men en masse arrived to form a pathway for R. R walks to the other end where Mandok puts a Knox robe on him before declaring R as the new emperor. The army cheers, and R also reveals that he has the proper key, which comes in the form of Mu-Jin, who's currently trapped by R's abilities. After all that, the army declares that today is the perfect day for Rupture. Mu-Jin sees all this and asks R if he's planning on destroying humanity as well. And it's here that we find out that R is just a guy who wants to see the world burn. He's an agent of chaos, and that's exactly what he aims to bring to the world now that he has all the power he needs. He then tells Mu-Jin that he's going to fashion this new world, one that is different from what Mu-Jin wanted. And before walking away, R even tells Mu-Jin that he let him live as a way of thanking him for all the grace Mu-Jin has shown him. All Mu-Jin can do now is just sit back and enjoy the world that R is going to create. The chapter ends with the same flashback at the beginning of the story, the moment when Mu-Jin asked the young R to join him if he wanted to turn the world upside down. Now, God of High School gives us a fully fleshed out origin story for this dastardly new emperor right away, as we go to another flashback from a long time ago. Here we see Okwang at the prime of his life. He's involved with a romantic partner, which happens to be the woman who would eventually give birth to R. First, we see this lovey-dovey couple frolicking around on a meadow. Everything seems sweet too, as Okwang catches the woman when she trips on a stone on the ground. But then, any of our hopes for a romantic story is shattered when we find out that Okwang has pretty much used this woman as part of his early cloning experiments. That is to say, this god knocked her up and put her in a chemical vat. If that's not bad enough, Okwang notices that the fetus inside her body is encroaching upon the woman, which prompts him to deem his experiment a failure. Oh, and that's not all, because we also get to find out that Okwang has been pumping random women with his seed all this time. Each and every one of them has been deemed as a failed experiment, so Okwang did what every scumbag god does, order for each of his wives to get terminated in the most inhumane way possible. Specifically, he proceeded to dissolve their unconscious pregnant bodies with the chemical vats. Surprisingly, Okwang discovers that the same woman he was with at the meadow remains alive even as her body is being eroded in the vats. Time passes and we find out that this woman has successfully found a way to escape Okwang's clutches with her newborn baby. However, she nearly dies during her escape when she loses her footing and tumbles down a hill. At this point, we discover that she's given birth to a grotesque baby with glowing eyes. The infant then crawls towards its mother and proceeds to literally chow down on her. Kudos to R's mom though, because she takes it like a champ and tells the baby R to fully consume her so that he could survive no matter what. Later, Okwang discovers what happened and successfully retrieves the baby, who has since transformed into a more human-like creature after cannibalizing his mother. A few more years pass and Okwang decides to finally put a complete stop to his project and orders his men to dispose of all their test subjects, with a young R being one of them. However, a few more years pass and we find out that R escaped from being terminated and he becomes a homeless kid. Unknown to him, however, some people around the city know about his reputation. In fact, R has become a sort of legend at this point, the kid who doesn't age or die. In addition to that, people think that you can eat his bones and it would cure any disease. In fact, a couple of random men attempt to capture R and literally cook him into soup. But then, this is where Mu-Jin enters the kid's life. He rescues R from his deranged assailants, but he doesn't do this out of the goodness of his heart. Truth is, Mu-Jin explicitly makes it clear that he pretty much owns R now, considering that he saved the boy's life. We finally go back to the present where Greed dumps some exposition about how exactly Okwang's clones work. The sentient baseball bat reveals that he and R are called Tams, the earliest versions of Okwang's clones in his bid to gain immortality. The original Tams were deemed a failure long ago, so Okwang decided to polish his formula and separate the original Tams into 3 distinct objects: the energy stones, the Dante clones, and the Tam. Greed then hits us with the revelation that R is currently the worst creature imaginable in all of existence. Basically, he's an original Tam that has the ability to devour everything on Earth. Meanwhile, we find out that Okwang is still alive after R sucked off his life force. However, he's turned into an old man again. R tells him to stop pushing himself so hard, as we get another flashback from not too long ago when R snuck into Okwang's private chambers. It turns out that R sabotaged the batch of Dante clones that Okwang had in order to destabilize them and further weaken the king when he attempted to absorb them. In a way, R believes he did the Dantes a service by allowing them to get the revenge on their father. In the present, R gives Okwang a classic play-by-play on how he was able to easily absorb the old man's energy, and it's thanks to a few factors. 1. There's the unstable Dante clones R orchestrated. 2. Okwang's fight with Huey drained the old man's energy and softened him up. And 3. Mu-Jin's use of the Holy Grail sealed off Okwang's powers. All this became a swirl of good luck for R to allow him to steal Okwang's life force. With his monologue finally finished, R starts to activate his ability and begins to consume Okwang and steal the cane of the sage too. While all this is happening, Romario is busy fighting off the hordes of R loyalists attacking him. We find out that former Knox priests like Drake MacDonald and Axley have sided with R's new regime. Not only that, but each and every one of R's loyalists have been infused with an original Tam, making them more powerful than even a Knox bishop. Huey hears about this and is absolutely dumbfounded when he remembers that this process is pretty much the same exact thing that was done to their old enemy, Galactic. R then turns to Huey to drop a bombshell on him. First he tells Huey that unlike the others, he wasn't infused with the Tam, he was born with it. But the real shocker comes when R lets Huey know that he's currently infusing Meera's body with his own Tam somewhere. We then get yet another flashback. This time we find out just how deep R and Mandok's plans run. It's revealed that the rebellion against Okwang isn't just some temper tantrum from a couple of boys. In truth, they actually propose their betrayal of the old man and the whole Rupture plan to the rest of the gods in the heavenly realm. Here we find out that the other gods are actually a bunch of sneaky backstabbers when Mandok proposes that they betray Okwang. Mandok further explained that Okwang crossed the line long ago, and R was living proof of it. According to these other gods, they never liked Okwang anyway, because the dude's kind of an arrogant prick who thinks that he's the only one who has the right to decide humanity's fate. So Mandok suggests that they should replace Okwang with R as the new emperor. After that, they'd proceed with the Rupture, which will then allow the gods of the heavenly realm to invade the human realm. And to make the deal extra sweet, Mandok even tells them that they shouldn't worry about their vital energy once they arrive on Earth. That's because Mandok and R are also planning on using humans as livestock by cloning them and then sucking off their life force to be absorbed by the gods, which would then extend their lifespans indefinitely. In the present, R uses Mu-Jin as a key in order to open up a gigantic portal with the Cane of the Sage. Mandok sees this and starts hyping up the crowd like he was an announcer at the God of High School World Tournament. Shortly after, R successfully completes the ritual to open the gateway and the Heavenly Realm's colossal castle appears in the skies above the city. Angels and flying fortresses pour out of the castle and begin to wreak havoc on the human realm. Mu-Jin and the rest of his crew realize that they don't stand a chance against this onslaught, while Huey looks at the scene in front of him slack-jawed. Suddenly, a man with red skin, pointy ears, and horns appears beside Huey and starts chatting him up. Mu-Jin and Kim see the man, as he tells Huey that he's going for a little drive on his hot pink scooter. Mu-Jin finally recognizes who this is, the peak of Northern European mythology and a tyrant who loves wisdom and war, Odin. And yeah, his hot pink scooter is supposed to be his horse, Sleipnir. One by one, the gods of the heavenly realm make each of their own grand entrances to the human realm, as Mu-Jin notices that Jupiter, aka Zeus, has also joined the party. Then there's Michael the Archangel and Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies. In fact, Mu-Jin recognizes Beelzebub when they fought a while back in chapter 176. Finally, there's a gigantic face staring at everyone from the sky, who is then revealed to be a god simply named as the Unknown. Mandok greets the gods and shows them the captured Okwang. Beelzebub mocks the old man as Mu-Jin tries to curse Beelzebub. The Lord of the Flies hears Mu-Jin and stabs him in the gut with his tail for looking at him with murderous eyes. Beelzebub then recognizes both Mu-Jin and Mandok, noting that it's interesting to see them. Another god sees Huey and mistakes the boy for the real Monkey King, but Beelzebub corrects him and tells Michael that Huey is just a savage clone. After that, Beelzebub introduces him, a relatively young god who Beelzebub calls the new master of the first realm and the same god who defeated him, 666, Satan. Meanwhile, Odin tells Okwang that the reason they agreed to R and Mandok's proposal was simple. It's all business. Simply put, they made a better offer compared to their previous deal with the old man. We then find out that there's one more god in their ranks, as we get introduced to a purple-haired girl who happens to be the Archangel Uriel. She basically doesn't contribute anything at this point other than teasing and prodding Okwang while the old man is already down. At the same time, Odin tries to steal Okwang's third eye, but R stops him from doing so, telling the red-skinned god that it belongs to him. Odin doesn't press the matter and allows R to have it, instead opting to just ride around the human world for the first time in ages. While this is happening, Uriel tries to act cute with Okwang and asks the old man why he's gotten so weak. Zeus thinks it's because Okwang abandoned his training while in the human realm, but Uriel appears to be deaf to anything other than her own voice and concludes that Huey is just much stronger than Okwang. Okwang tries to bring some coherence to Uriel's blathering and asks her if she could continue upholding the long-standing non-aggression pact between the various realms and species of their universe. Okwang might be one irredeemable geezer, but he sure is fond of humanity, which is why he wants them to keep existing. Witnessing that, we just get even more proof that Uriel is pretty much oblivious to anything other than her own voice when she ignores Okwang's request and decides to just destroy everything because she's so stressed. From there, the various gods of the heavenly realm proceed to turn the entire world into their playground. Zeus goes to space and summons a thunderbolt that destroys Cordoba in Argentina. Odin derails an entire train in the southern French city of Nietzsche with his hot pink Sleipnir scooter. Michael the Archangel doesn't get off his butt and instead relegates the destruction of Guangxi, China, to his angelic subordinates. And Uriel kills tons of Jeddah citizens in the Middle East with her hair. In Seoul, we find out that the other human combatants, like Team USA's Anna and Team Japan's Koichi, are still alive, as they battle R's forces. Koichi thinks it's the legitimate end of the world, while R continues to relish the chaos, because he just wants to see the world burn. Satan tries to use his powers in the middle of Seoul, but Beelzebub stops the boy from doing it, telling him that they shouldn't 100% wreck their new home. Satan agrees, and we also discover that the Unknown just keeps on staring at the world, holding it in place like a stalker in outer space. Meanwhile, the rest of the judges desperately trying to revive Mu-Jin and Judge P. Mu-Jin regains consciousness and thinks that it's not yet time to act against the gods. According to him, a chance will certainly come for them to mount a counteroffensive against these new powerful enemies. But then R reveals another surprise as he tells everyone that he's now going to summon the second heavenly realm. Everybody stops in their tracks as R channels power through the cane of the sage. Moments later, humongous spiky structures sprout from the ground underneath the earth to the shock of our heroes. In the present, Zeus admires the sight of the world from outer space after he bombarded it with his lightning bolts. Down below, we find that everyone's favorite freckled, rat-toothed Argentinian warrior, Samuel, has assumed leadership of the other former God of High School World Tournament team members. They fight off scores of our soldiers until they're forced to brace for impact when Zeus slams down in front of them, which then causes the ark to capsize and get thrown into the sea. After the dust settles, Samuel and his companions discover Zeus staring at them. The thunder god then proceeds to kill everyone aside from Samuel by swatting them like flies. By the time he's done massacring the human warriors, only Samuel and Anna remain. Zeus then approaches Anna and tells her that he senses Thor's power inside her. Anna screams for help just as Zeus squashes her with his palm, and Samuel comes up clutch as he swoops in to save the girl in the nick of time. However, Zeus manages to obliterate Samuel's left leg during the rescue. The thunder god looks at him and wonders why he senses a powerful force similar to his own coming from Samuel. Mandok then tells Zeus that it's because Samuel is a lineal descendant of his son Hercules. Specifically, Samuel is the fruit of Hercules' debauchery on Earth. The god of high school manhwa then takes a super creepy turn when Zeus hears the word debauchery and, like in the actual Greek myths, becomes an absolute sex pest toward Anna. The girl can only scream as she sees Zeus approaching her. Thankfully, Zeus stops when he hears the voice of his wife Hera chastising him for trying to cheat on her yet again. We then find out that the second stringers, aka the Advent gods from the second heavenly realm, have arrived. These include the likes of the other Greek gods like Hera, Athena, Hades, and Poseidon. Athena mentions that the Norse figure Valkyrie was with them earlier, but she headed off to meet with Odin. R then welcomes these newcomers and tells them that the human realm is pretty much their new home now and that they can do whatever they want with it. Meanwhile, not too far away, Kim asks Hanryang what would happen to the concept of money now that the gods are here. Hanryang tells him that it basically has no meaning anymore, since humanity is about to be destroyed. Well, if you didn't know by now, this absolutely does not sit well with Dusic Kim, so he walks towards the battlefield upon hearing this. At the same time, Zeus is absolutely cuckolded as he tries to convince Hera that she's his #1 girl. Hera asks Zeus to prove it by tearing humans apart in front of her, and he agrees. Kim continues his trek toward the gods until Hades blocks his path. Hades tries to intimidate Kim, so he gets a punch in the face for standing in the man's way. Kim then reaches Zeus and analyzes him, concluding that he's one of those martial artists who doesn't rely on borrowed power. And in true Dusic Kim fashion, he tells Zeus that the only thing he knows is how to work hard and spend harder. Kim then gives Zeus a beating so hard that you'd think the Greek god owed Kim financial money. He bashes Zeus with a technique called First Punch, Tooth Smash, before hitting him with a gut shot named Second Punch, Baseball Batter. Kim follows it up with Third Punch, Mouth Smack, and the proverbial gloves just come off, as he barrages Zeus with a technique called Fourth and Fifth Punch, Mouth Smack ×2, ×3, ×4. In fact, Hanryang sees all this happening and he can't help but admire Kim's absolute stupidity for going toe-to-toe with an actual god. After his assault, Kim is taken by surprise to discover that Zeus just ate all of his attacks up without taking any damage. The thunder god then punches him square in the face. And believe us when we say that Kim got bodied so hard that he ended up walking in a different time zone. That is to say, Zeus literally smacked Kim from Seoul, South Korea to Shanghai, China. Zeus then asks Samuel where they are. Samuel says that they're in Seoul. When Zeus hears this though, he stomps his foot on the ground and causes an earthquake felt throughout the world. All the while, he declares that this place shouldn't be called Seoul, South Korea anymore. From now on, they're going to name it New Olympus. The Thunder God then continues to wreak havoc by causing more tremors all around the city as he commands humanity to worship him. Underground, the surviving citizens in Hanryang's homeless association has saved attempt to get above ground because the tunnels they're hiding in are starting to collapse. They're near the exit when a cave-in happens and the roof of the tunnel collapses. Thankfully, homeless association members Hwang, Kim, Choi, and Park prevent it from fully crashing down on them with the help of their Puma the 46 stance, ground support technique. They then tell all the civilians to escape above ground as they collectively decide to sacrifice themselves as a way to give back everything that their leader, Hanryang, had provided them. In the end, the 4 homeless dudes lose their lives when they reach their limit, saving Seoul's innocent citizens along the way. However, the powerless residents of the city end up in a whole new world of trouble when they reach Seoul's surface. When they emerge from the tunnels, they're greeted by Michael's hordes of angels and flying fortresses, who proceed to summarily execute them one by one. They're not completely helpless though, as Kim's very own soldiers, the Dusic gang, arrive on the scene to help fend off the gigantic beasts. Somewhere else, we discover that Odin has reunited with his 2 attendants from the second heavenly realm, Mu-Jin and Munin. In addition to that, we discover that they're accompanied by Odin's very own bodyguards, the Valkyries. Odin then uses his abilities to transform Hugin, Munin, and the Valkyries' clothes to something more appropriate for their stay on Earth. That is to say, he transformed their armor into maid cosplay outfits. Odin then asks the squad where the leader of the second heavenly realm is right now, who tells him that he's having a meal, because at this moment, a grotesque god bearing the features of a man and a bird is chowing down on the remains of a sage realm dragon. Somewhere else, Zeus keeps on wrecking Sol's once wonderful cityscape in a wanton display of mindless rampage. He only stops when Huey approaches and tells the Thunder God to stop destroying the world. Hell, Huey shows he's not going to back down and even calls Zeus a crazy bastard for trying to mess with the place he calls home. Zeus replies by trying to crush Huey with his fist, but our boy proves he can still fight when he dodges the blow and literally bites off a chunk of the Thunder God's skin. And if you still thought that Huey was just a regular old clone at this point, then you might just change your mind when you realize that he's doing all this as a quadruple amputee. Huey peels off Zeus's arm skin when the god tries to hurl him into the air. In turn, Huey uses this to propel himself upwards and launch himself back towards Zeus. The Thunder God tries to punch Huey, but he counters this by headbutting Zeus's fist. Nearby, Hanryang sees the whole chaotic scene before him and asks Mu-Jin what he was thinking when he planned on facing these monsters. Meanwhile, Zeus manages to grab Huey by his right stump and smash the boy into the ground. Zeus tries to deliver the killing blow, but Hanryang intervenes and rescues his student. Hanryang then orders Judge S and the others to get as far away as possible just as he defends against another one of Zeus's strikes. The rest of the judges follow the order and notice powerful energy coming from Hanryang. S then gives us a lowdown about Hanryang. It turns out that before the Six's defeat at the hands of Jin Tai-Jin 17 years ago, Hanryang wasn't always called by the nickname, the Weapon Master. Back then, Hanryang had a reputation for having a fiery temper, and people used to call him by another name entirely, the Hulk. In the middle of the battlefield, Hanryang proceeds to barrage Zeus with a succession of unanswered staff strikes. He's able to go toe-to-toe with the Thunder God and dodge when Zeus attempts to counter, and Hanryang manages to pepper his opponent with more strikes. Eventually, Hanryang finds an opening and attempts to activate a technique called Pumbaa the Ultimate. However, he fails to completely unleash it when Zeus tries to hit him with his finger. They clash, and as you'd expect, an explosion from the impact of their attacks engulfs the immediate vicinity. The display of power is so huge that even the rest of the gods can't help but commend humans like Hanryang who are able to hold their own against bona fide gods without the use of any borrowed power. The dust settles and we see that Hanryang's arm has been damaged from the previous clash. However, it's revealed that he was just providing Huey enough time to backstab Zeus with Yoi, which the boy holds in his mouth. Somewhere near, Romario impales R from behind in order to distract him long enough for Shao Chen to rescue Okwang. She swoops in and manages to grab the King of Knox, but actually chops off a few of her hair tentacles, which forces Shao Chen to crash into the ground. Meanwhile, Romario has found himself slowly getting absorbed by R. The whole debacle distracts R enough that he fails to notice Huey's expanded Yoi about to run them through. Seconds later, we see that Zeus has stopped Yoi with his bare hand, while R is completely unharmed after dodging the gigantic staff. Zeus chastises Huey and Hanryang for treating him like small fry, as the Thunder God channels his power and teleports right through the two of them. Huey is too slow to react, but we instantly find out that Hanryang has protected him again, this time allowing Zeus to bite off his whole right arm to get Huey out of harm's way. Nearby, R prepares to go after Okwang. However, Athena appears and tells him to uphold the original deal by summoning the third heavenly realm. So, R orders his new Tam-powered army, which he calls the Morning Crow, to take care of retrieving Okwang for him. Meanwhile, Romario and Shao Chen gather what's left of their strength to haul the old man's unconscious body and escape the ongoing war. However, they are forced to stop when Mandoc suddenly appears in front of the two bishops. Knowing that they're no match for him now, Romario literally gets on his knees and begs Mandoc to spare the king. But he's not having any of it. Mandoc prepares to take out the three. However, we find out that there are still Knox followers loyal to Okwang that have survived up until now. They witness Mandoc about to destroy Okwang, Shao Chen, and Romario, so they rush toward Mandoc and dogpile him to buy the old man some time to escape. Back to Hanryang. Zeus taunts the Six's resident weapon master and tells him how delicious his arm tastes. Huey then asks Hanryang why he chose to save him even though he's just a clone. The master and the student get into a bit of drama, as Hanryang tells Huey that he's not just a clone, he's an actual human being who values this world more than anyone. As such, he's worth protecting. Zeus mocks them for sharing their feelings, so Hanryang turns to the Thunder God and reveals that he left a surprise inside his severed arm when Zeus bit it off. We find out that the Weapon Master planted a grenade inside it, and it explodes right inside the Thunder God's mouth. This causes Zeus to lose a tooth and bleed profusely, as Hanryang laughs at the fact that gods bleed the same way as humans. This angers Zeus, so he teleports behind Hanryang and proceeds to crush him with an ungraceful technique simply called Thunder Hammer. The Thunder God then teleports behind Huey and tries to eat the boy. However, everyone's favorite loan shark, Dusik Kim, arrives just in time to pay Zeus back by punching the god in the face so hard that they both tumble through the city ruins. Kim gets back on his feet and is absolutely livid that Zeus sent him to China. Now, if you're wondering how Kim got back to Korean soil, well, he literally ran all the way here. And for that, Zeus is going to pay. So Kim lunges at Zeus at supersonic speed and uses a devastating move called Zero Punch, Jiola Iksan, which sends the Thunder God flying through the country until he crashes and destroys Mount Meryuk. Still, this isn't enough to bring their opponent down, as Zeus recovers and teleports behind Kim before bashing him repeatedly with Thunder Hammer. With Kim knocked out, Zeus goes back to Huey and prepares to eat the boy. However, Zeus stops when his mustachioed brother, Poseidon, arrives to report that Okwang has escaped and that Ara is currently opening the gate to the third heavenly realm. We then find out that there is infighting going on between the gods themselves, as Zeus tells that each and every one of them are trying to one-up each other in order to steal Okwang's stuff, such as his third eye, aka the king's wisdom, the king's robe, and the king's power itself. Zeus declares that he's going to join the fray and attempt to beat everyone else to these spoils. So he jumps away from the battlefield in a single bound, leaving our battered heroes to recompose themselves. Moments later, Hanryang tells Huey that they have to stop Zeus from grabbing the king's powers and artifacts because that can only be bad news. Huey doesn't know how they'll do it, considering they're completely mismatched against these gods. But Hanryang tells him that they have to do everything they can to prevent them from snagging Okwang's power. So he suggests that the best option they have is if they finish off the old man's life themselves in order to prevent the gods or anyone else from stealing his objects of power. Somewhere else, we finally get caught up with Uma and Beck, and we find out that the Oxen King has been hiding ever since the gods arrived on Earth. Beck asks her why she's doing this, to which Uma reveals that she plans on regaining her original form while the rest of the gods are distracted. However, a wrench is thrown into their plans when the leader of the second heavenly realm, whose name is revealed to be Garuda, appears in front of Uma and Beck. Beck tries to attack Garuda, but Uma pulls him back. The Oxen King tells her lover to stay calm because Garuda is a powerful opponent. Garuda then continues to speak to Uma and reminisce about their past. He wonders how her fight with Michael the Archangel during the Great War would have played out if he hadn't intervened. Uma then asks Garuda why he betrayed them during that ancient encounter, and we get the reveal that Garuda didn't always used to be a god. In truth, Garuda was one of Uma's sworn brothers, just like the Monkey King, known as the fourth demon, Rock Demon King. Uma then tells Beck that he only got the name Garuda after he betrayed Uma and the other citizens of the Sage Realm during the Great War. Afterwards, we find out that Garuda isn't here to fight. Instead, he wants to make Uma an offer, as he reveals that he knows how to get her original body back. While all this is happening, we find Romario and Xiao Chen desperately trying to get as far away from the battlefield as possible, as they and the remaining Knox loyalists fend off any morning crow trying to halt their progress. Okwang notices that his low-level followers are literally using themselves as human shields against their enemies, and like a true bastard, he mocks them for trying to put their lives on the line to protect him even when they know that they have no fighting chance against the likes of Mandok and the Morning Crow army. At the same time, Mandok and the other gods each mobilize to get to the king and steal his power before anyone else does, while Romario and his team are caught off guard by the arrival of Zeus. The Thunder God immediately attacks Romario, Xiao Chen, and Okwang upon spotting them and proceeds to massacre the Morning Crow army that are sent to retrieve the old man. This gives Romario enough time to recover and go for one last-ditch effort to protect Okwang from Zeus, as he transforms and rushes the Thunder God. Always the loyal bishop, Romario tells Xiao Chen to take their king and go without him. Xiao Chen follows the order, but she's shocked to see that Hanryang is already standing over Okwang's near-unconscious body. Hanryang then prepares to strike down Okwang to prevent everyone else from stealing his power. Surprisingly though, Hanryang has a change of heart at the last second and instead decides to protect Okwang from his assailants. Moments later, Hanryang is struck by a lightning bolt, as Zeus approaches carrying Romario's lifeless, severed body. However, Hanryang proves that he's a cut above the rest when he recovers and hits Zeus with his trademark Pumbaa Zero stance, Panhandler, to prevent him from taking Okwang. Hanryang knows it's not enough to take down Zeus, but it gives the old man enough time to get on his feet and walk away from the battle. In the end, Zeus manages to crush Hanryang, as Okwang crawls his way along the field. With Hanryang out of commission, Zeus sets his eyes on Xiao Chen, who has sprung into action to buy Okwang more time to escape. Zeus admits that he's impressed that Hanryang was able to bruise his body, but then the story takes another uncomfortable turn when he makes creepy advances on Xiao Chen upon seeing the sexy bishop in front of him. Meanwhile, Okwang finally realizes the error of his ways when he remembers how a mere human like Hanryang defended him against a powerful threat like Zeus. In addition to that, he also reminisces on the bet he made with the Monkey King after the Great War. Okwang then accepts his death but is shocked to see the figure of a man in front of him. Seeing the shadowy figure, Okwang smiles and realizes that this must be his destiny. Not too far away, Xiao Chen fights with all she's got against Zeus. The Thunder God easily severs both of her arms before trampling her with a technique called Thunder Soccer. Still, Xiao Chen keeps getting back on her feet to try and protect Okwang's escape. At the same time, the other gods in Mandok's faction have arrived to join the fray and attempt to get to the old man. Xiao Chen knows there's nothing she could do against this threat, but she continues to remain committed to the fight. Zeus prepares to deliver Xiao Chen the killing blow but is shocked to find that someone has stopped Zeus's fist mid-punch. We then get the big reveal that this guy is the same shadowy figure that Okwang saw before the old man died. And this guy is none other than the fully revived Han Dae-Wi. Oh, and our hunky boy has finally regained his missing eye now, and it bears Okwang's symbol too. That's because Okwang had willingly passed on his powers to Dae-Wi, which now allows a Kyokushin karate practitioner to use the old man's control over the laws of physics. With it, he forces Zeus to his knees by using the gravity ability. And in a flashback from a few moments earlier, we find out that not only did Okwang pass on his powers to Dae-Wi, but he also granted him the title King of all the Humans. In the present, Dae-Wi thinks about Meera and how he plans on saving his girlfriend. At the same time, Shao Chen and the other Knox followers who were once loyal to Okwang turn toward Dae-Wi and declare him as the new rightful Jade Emperor. The chapter ends with Okwang remembering his bet with the Monkey King in the past, about whether humans are strong enough to not require the god's control. In the present, Dae-Wi makes each and every one of his enemies literally bend the knee when he activates gravity times 100. He then uses his newfound powers to help Shao Chen regenerate her missing arms, while Mandoc whines about how Okwang's power doesn't belong to Dae-Wi. At the same time, Michael and his army of mindless angels give us a rundown about what happened when Okwang passed on his power to Dae-Wi. We discover that Okwang's power has been basically split in two. On one hand, R possesses the old man's physical power. On the other hand, Dae-Wi holds Okwang's mind and wisdom. Like a true schemer, Michael decides to hold off from any further attack and instead observe Dae-Wi from a distance. On the ground, Dae-Wi tells the Morning Crow army that he won't harm them if they leave now. Every Morning Crow except for a couple tuck tail and run. Moments later, Zeus gets back on his feet and gets ready to tussle with Dae-Wi. So the new Jade Emperor tells Shao Chen to stand back while he deals with the Thunder God. From there, Dae-Wi ups the ante on his gravity technique when Zeus tries to step up to him. First, he goes for gravity times 200, then increases it to gravity times 400. When he notices that Zeus still hasn't fallen back on his knees, Dae-Wi goes and employs full playground rules when he goes for gravity times 1000 to finally stop Zeus in his tracks. However, Zeus is obsessed with stealing Okwang's power for himself, so he summons his weapon called the Ultimate Thunderbreaker, which is a literal gigantic thunderbolt, and uses it to try and strike down Dae-Wi. But Dae-Wi easily counters this and obliterates Zeus's body with his strong force ability, channeling the power of the sun to melt away the Thunder God until only his bones are left. The rest of the gods are taken by surprise to discover that one of their ranks has died. But not Satan, because the crazy young god gets excited when he finds out about this. And just to show that Dae-Wi has become an absolute unit, he even manages to incinerate Michael's angels along the way. Michael notices that Dae-Wi still hasn't fully learned how to control Okwang's abilities. On the ground, Dae-Wi tries to recover but is suddenly stabbed by one of Poseidon's tridents. The whole gang of Greek gods from the second heavenly realm then arrive to try and gang up on Dae-Wi and steal Okwang's power for themselves. However, Dae-Wi is able to get back on his feet and pull out Poseidon's trident from his side. The rest of the Greek gods and a few Morning Crow fanatics then rush towards his location. We also find out that Zeus is still sort of alive, as his skeleton moves to grab Dae-Wi and subdue him. Shao Chen watches in horror when she sees the gods pile on Dae-Wi and repeatedly stab him, but we instantly find out that none of their attacks have worked. That's because Okwang didn't just pass his powers to the boy, he also gave him his powerful artifact, the Sage's Robe. This renders him impervious to any attack. And with his enemy's assault over and done with, Dae-Wi gets ready to cook. He combines his Kyokushin karate techniques with Okwang's powers, as he sends his enemies flying with the kick of the Red Phoenix, Repulsive Force. He then lines up Poseidon, Hera, Athena, and Hades to form a 4-layer Greek god sandwich with the Fist of the Black Turtle, Attractive Force, before blowing a hole right through each of their torsos. And since he has had it up to here with Zeus's advances, he turns around and pulverizes the Thunder God's skeleton with the Dance of the White Tiger, Inertia. Michael sees all of this happen and comments that Dae-Wi might just be stronger than Okwang in his prime, all thanks to the combination of the old man's power with Dae-Wi's own superb human fighting skills. Moments later, Dae-Wi loses the Sage's Robe, and a couple of Morning Crows take this as an invitation to sucker punch him. However, Shao Chen jumps into action to protect their new Jade Emperor, while the rest of his followers deal with the other stragglers on the field. It doesn't take long for the rest of the gods like Garuda, Odin, Satan, and Uriel to arrive on the scene. Dae-Wi sees them and tells his men that they're free to run away if they want to. If they're planning on staying, however, he humbly requests them to lend him their strength. Unsurprisingly, the Knox cultists willingly give their lives and pledge allegiance to follow Dae-Wi, their new king, as they prepare to throw down with the remaining gods of the heavenly realm. Somewhere else on the battlefield, we find out that the Sage Realm army have been fighting the heavenly realm's forces valiantly this whole time. They suffer heavy losses in the ensuing skirmish, but ultimately come out on top when they notice that the number of enemy troops have gone down. The monkey warriors of Orguk then realize that the reason behind this is because the angels and flying fortresses are making a beeline towards Dae-Wi's location. In a hidden laboratory, Dae-Wi's best boy and borrowed power contract holder, Hei-Tae, watches over Meera while she recuperates inside a suspension chamber. Hei-Tae gets restless when he senses Dae-Wi's presence, and after a couple of seconds fidgeting like the good boy that he is, Hei-Tae decides to leave Meera's side for the time being to go to Dae-Wi. In the meantime, the gods of the heavenly realm try to intimidate Dae-Wi with the size of their army. Ryu and his monkey warrior squad arrive in the area shortly after and he tries to aid Dae-Wi. However, one of the other monkey warriors stops Ryu from helping their old friend when he tells him that Dae-Wi might be an enemy since he's now working with Knox. Suddenly, Michael's angels get cheeky and try to rain down spears on Dae-Wi and his army. He then fends these off with natural repulsive force and inertia force. However, Dae-Wi fails to stop them completely. He's too late to protect his men, but is surprised when he sees that a bubble shield is formed around them. This makes Dae-Wi instantly realize that his old pal Hei-Tae has arrived, and the little guy proceeds to give him wonderful kisses before hanging on his shoulder. Xiao Chen and the Knox loyalists see Hei-Tae and revere him as the king's pet. Hei-Tae then reports Meera's condition to Dae-Wi before using his trademark recovery skill to help the monkey warriors heal from their battle wounds. Afterwards, Ryu pleads with the rest of his squad to help Dae-Wi, considering that he's a man that their own leader, the Monkey King, trusts and probably has a good reason for working with Knox at this moment. The monkey warrior squad are convinced and they join Dae-Wi's ranks. Hei-Tae then finishes healing all of their allies and Dae-Wi leads the charge against their enemies. The gods try to stop Dae-Wi's forces in their tracks when the Unknown inhales the Earth's atmosphere and throws it back as an I-beam. But this just shows that the bald gigantic head in space is just a scrub when Dae-Wi and Hei-Tae easily counter his I-beams with strong force, which causes the Unknown's attack to literally blow up right in his face. A second later, we see Hei-Tae transforming from a cute critter to an absolute hulking beast called Licorn when he and Dae-Wi form a direct contract with each other. Licorn then launches himself into outer space and absolutely ravages the Unknown by repeatedly biting the giant god's throat. On the ground, the combined might of the Sage Realm's warriors and Dae-Wi's Nox army clash with the angels, while Satan faces off against Dae-Wi himself. Somewhere else, we finally get up to speed with what Jin Taijin has been up to all this time. It turns out that he and Bong-Chim are having themselves a good old-fashioned martial arts duel inside a cave. Taijin asks Bong-Chim if they could suspend their scrap for now, considering that things are getting chaotic around here, to which Bong-Chim agrees. They then look out into the distance to see the god's colossal fortress hovering over the city. We then get a flashback from an hour earlier when Su-Jin, Ma-Bora, and Gang Mansok had just rescued Taijin. During this time, Taijin elected to stay behind so that he could recuperate his strength. Su-Jin then decided to let Ma-Bora and Mansok keep an eye on Taijin while she helped the rest of the resistance group. With Su-Jin gone, Taijin put in a bit of exercise, which convinced Mansok and Ma-Bora that this old man was the real deal. Shortly after that, Bong-Chim arrived inside the cave to challenge Taijin to a duel for taking his arm 17 years ago. Ma-Bora and Mansok wonder if it's wise to have a fight inside the cave, but they ultimately let the two geezers have at it. In the present, we see that the god's army and Dae-Wi's group are currently locked in a furious battle. Xiao Chen realizes that although it may seem they're evenly matched, the gods are slowly gaining ground against them. Mandok then arrives to murder scores of monkey warriors standing in his path, but he fails to completely destroy them with his gigantic sword when Taijin joins the fray and catches it with his leg. Taijin then disintegrates Mandok's giant sword, as Bong-Chim saves him from being sucker punched by an angel. The old martial arts artists then banter while they easily take out any enemy coming their way. Eventually, the angels dogpile the two masters while Mandok summons a bevy of giant swords to rain down upon them. But Bong-Chim and Taijin just shrug these off without taking any damage. Taijin then spots Mandok and tells him he's going to pay him back for chopping off his left arm. Mandok acts tough and replies by telling Taijin that he'll even chop off his right arm this time. The two then clash and it only takes a few moments before Mandok realizes that he's about to be humbled, as Taijin hits him with a body kick that sends Mandok flying. Mandok recovers and teleports behind Taijin, but Bong-Chim jumps in and paralyzes Mandok with his Bong-Chim technique before feeding their incapacitated enemy to Taijin. Taijin isn't at all happy that Bong-Chim butted in, but he accepts the fact that the situation calls for it. Bong-Chim even adds that borrowed power users are more often than not softer than Charmin, since their physical bodies have not been honed like a martial artist. So Taijin proceeds to give Mandok the beating he absolutely deserves. Taijin repeatedly punishes the traitorous bishop with successive knees to the face and body, while Bong-Chim keeps Mandok incapacitated from behind with continuous applications of Bong-Chim. A few seconds later, Xiao Chen even joins in on the party, surprising the old men as she gives Mandok a spine-cracking body blow. Xiao Chen then taunts Mandok to show her what he's got and uses original way of borrowed power transformation. Mandok obliges and Xiao Chen transforms into her original way of borrowed power form herself. However, their clash is cancelled when Taijin steps in and knocks out Xiao Chen with a chop to the back of the neck. He apologizes to her for doing that before telling Xiao Chen that he and Mandok have a score to settle. He then turns towards the transformed Mandok and tells the boy to bring it on. Somewhere else, Huey and R have a conversation. R asks Huey why he's fighting them, given that he'll just disappear when the original Jin Mo-Ri comes back. Huey hears this and tells R that he doesn't care about that. All he wants is to protect the world. R then tries to get into Huey's head by revealing that Dae-Wi has been revived. He then doubles down on his attempt at throwing Huey off balance by telling him that Dae-Wi would have come straight to Huey if he really cared about him. None of this works because Huey just cries tears of joy after finding out that Dae-Wi is alive and well. Realizing that none of his efforts to lower Huey's morale worked, R prepares to just go on a fist fight with his opponent. Huey does the same, and we even find out that he's unlocked a new layer to his power when his irises change colors. Huey and R lunge at each other, but their clash is interrupted when Beck and Uma teleport in front of Huey. forcing the Monkey King's clone to stop mid-attack. Somewhere else, Bong-Chim uses his Tai Chi techniques to try and heal Han Riang, but both of them know that this is the end for the Six's weapon master. Ultimately, Han Riang thanks Bong-Chim for arriving, because his presence has evened the odds against the forces of the Heavenly Realm. Han Riang makes one last request of Bong-Chim and tells the old man to help the unconscious Dusik Kim. Bong-Chim agrees and leaves Han Riang. Moments later, we find out that Meera has fully recovered as she walks toward the dying weapon master. Han Riang expresses how proud he is that Meera became his student. As a token of his gratitude, he bequeaths Meera with his trademark staff, which happens to be both a national treasure and the symbol of the National Homeless Association. This effectively makes Meera the current leader of the National Homeless Association, and she pays her final respects to Han Riang before leaving. Han Riang passes on and meets his hobo friends in the afterlife, followed by a reunion with the rest of the fallen 6 members like Unyo and Jason John. Not long after that, we find out that Bong-Chim has also healed Mu-Jin, who wakes up to see the war between the gods and Dae-Wi's forces in the distance. Bong-Chim tells Mu-Jin that he's pretty much the one who started this whole mess, as Mu-Jin turns to see that Taijin is currently dueling with Mandok right now. Suddenly, former Knox priest Drake McDonald arrives at their location and starts to threaten Mu-Jin. Bong-Chim doesn't give them the time to mobilize though, as he takes out Drake's entire platoon with ease. Bong-Chim then greets Drake and tells him that he's going to use him as a punching bag. Meanwhile, the war between Dae-Wi's forces and the Heavenly Realm's army rages on, as Dae-Wi and Satan personally clash with each other. The two combatants get into it at close range, and Dae-Wi immediately realizes that Satan is purposely pulling him into hand-to-hand combat. So much so that Dae-Wi can't help but notice that fighting this god is eerily similar to fighting against the original Jin Mo-Ri. They trade a couple of intense blows that knock each of them away, but Dae-Wi is in for a big surprise when they see Satan channeling the wave of the blue dragon. Dae-Wi blocks the attack, but his enemy follows it up with the kick of the blue dragon. This prompts Dae-Wi to suspect that his enemy might be reading his mind. Some distance away, the other gods do some commentary on the fight, while Odin instead watches Taijin and Mandok tussle. To Odin, he finds it more interesting to watch Taijin fight, since he's the latest candidate to be the next god of fight. Eventually, Michael decides to get off his butt and finally personally join the battle in spite of Satan's threats to not intervene. This allows Dae-Wi to find an opening and hit his opponent with attractive force. Satan attempts to reflect the attack, but Dae-Wi follows it up with his repulsive force, causing the god to get blasted far away. However, a gigantic blade slashes its way towards Dae-Wi and we find out that this is Michael's judgment sword. Dae-Wi successfully blocks it and even breaks its tip before kicking the blade right back at the Archangel. Michael is surprised when Dae-Wi manages to slice his cheek. Meanwhile, Dae-Wi knows that he's outmatched now that he has to deal with more than a single god. Michael then tries to hit Dae-Wi with an ability called Judgment Sword 4. As the quadruple blades make their way toward him, Dae-Wi channels his energy and waits for the perfect moment to end this whole war with a single strike. We then immediately get some payoff when Taijin looks up to see what Dae-Wi's been cooking. It turns out that Dae-Wi has used his planet toss technique to literally pull the planet Mars from its orbit to try and hurl it on top of the gods. Dae-Wi admits that he might have gone just a little overboard after realizing that he's lost control of his power, but he leaps into action to fix it and properly hit the gods with the planet. However, he's too late because Uriel has taken it upon herself to single-handedly stop Mars from crashing on Earth. It fails miserably when she finds out she's not strong enough to stop an entire planet with her bare hands. So Odin helps her by summoning his legendary weapon, the Sage's Spear, aka Gungnir, to literally pulverize Mars. In the meantime, Satan has been hiding behind the dark side of the moon. He sees Dae-Wi's technique and gets jealous, so he copies it and tries to hurl the planet Jupiter right on Earth. In the skies above Earth, Dae-Wi strains as he uses his natural forces, repulsive force technique to stop Jupiter from destroying the world. At the same time, he uses the same ability to redirect the trajectory of Mars's remnants away from the citizens of the world. This proves too much for Dae-Wi and he ends up struggling to hold back Jupiter. All of a sudden, he hears Huey's voice, as Yui expands to help him stop the planet from crashing down on Earth. Dae-Wi sees Huey and the two heroes reunite. We then get another flashback from earlier when Huey and Arb were having their talk. Arb blathers on about Huey being a useless, unloved clone, but this does nothing to affect our boy's morale. In the end, Huey tells Arb that the only thing he cares about in this world is to be accepted by Meera and Dae-Wi as their friend and equal. So he declares that he's more than willing to sacrifice his life 1,000 times to do that. In the present, Huey and Dae-Wi's combined might successfully throws back the planet Jupiter, and we even see the unknown and Hate stop their fight to wonder what the hell is going on down on Earth's surface. In yet another flashback to the moments leading up to Dae-Wi and Huey's successful defense of planet Earth against Jupiter, we get up to speed with what's happening all over the city during this whole war between the gods and Knox Sage Realm Alliance. As you'd expect, hapless civilians are caught in the crossfire of this devastating battle, as the Heavenly Realm's angels attack them in the middle of searching for temporary shelter. Panic ensues and there's a kid who almost gets trampled during a stampede while looking for his little sister when citizens start to run away from the attacking angels. Thankfully, Dae-Wi's sister, Dar Young, spots the kid and rescues him. The kid reminds her of Dae-Wi, so she pretty much tells the boy to man up and stop crying so that they could look for his sister. The kid then follows Dae-Young's advice and she helps him. They eventually spot a group of people who are calling out for other citizens to join them in the shelter they found. There, the little boy is able to reunite with his little sister. All of a sudden, someone hands Dae-Young a poster with a photo of Meera on it. It turns out that the guy who gave it to him is none other than Meera's uncle, Deok-chung. Dae-Young recognizes Meera as Dae-Wi's girlfriend and basically calls Deok-chung her in-law. Inside the shelter, we find out that it's one run by Mu-Jin's public relations team. So you can bet that they're taking this opportunity to try and sway the people of Seoul to vote for Mu-Jin as president once this whole war is over. Mu-Jin's nurses assist the ravaged citizens as they arrive in droves. On the battlefield, we find out that former Knox priest Jang Ho-sik has become one of Judge Oh's pets, as he flies side by side with the red dragon Chang-sik. Kim checks in on his product, Mu-Jin, and asks him what's going on. Mu-Jin tells Kim that they've finally turned the tables against the Heavenly Realm. Meanwhile, Judge Oh is locked in a duel with former Knox priest Saturn, who has now become one of R's Morning Crows. Not too far away, Judge P goes on a rematch against the announcer, who at this point has been conclusively identified as a revived Judge T. At the same time, Judge Q is busy fighting against Drake. They trash talk at one another a bit, as Drake reminisces about the time Q defeated him during the first God of High School tournament. Back then, Q got salty and told Drake to quit trying to be a fighter because he sucks. In the present, Drake confesses that it's been his life mission to prove his abilities ever since that day. Q shares the same sentiment and hacks Drake in half with his Joker Scythe, but Drake regenerates when he summons his butterfly wings. The two form a weird bond with each other, as they show their gratitude for bringing out the best in each of them by good old-fashioned fisticuffs. Somewhere else, Taijin makes Mandak look like an absolute scrub by landing a single kick called non-recoil right at his midsection. Mandak can't believe that a one-armed old geezer is beating him this easily. Taijin then explains that he used to worry about losing his martial prowess after losing his arm, since he used to use it for balance. But now he's actually grateful towards Mandak for playing a part in his amputation because he's become an even deadlier version of himself. That is to say, Taijin has found a way to increase the powers of his kick all thanks to losing his left arm. In another part of the city, Pum Wang and Jang Mi finally confess their love for each other, with Pum Wang hitting Jang Mi with the super corny line that goes, "I've collected a lot of genuine brand name items, but you're the most genuine item of all in my life." Yeah, they're pretty much a couple now, guys. And they're not the only ones who are revealed to be lovers too, because somewhere else, Hyangdan and Go Gamdo hold each other as the war unfolds and wonder if this is really the end of the world. In the meantime, Gyeom-ji cries when he starts to think about Ma Bora while watching the world burn. Back in the shelter, Dae-Young prays for Dae-Wi's safety. Unknown to her, her little brother and Huey have already successfully saved the planet once more after knocking away the planet Jupiter, preventing it from crashing into Earth. In the aftermath, we find out that Huey has completely spent all of his remaining strength trying to help Dae-Wi. They freefall through the sky as Dae-Wi desperately uses his regeneration technique on Huey, but it doesn't work. Ultimately, Huey uses his fading strength in commanding Yoi to contract so that it stops from becoming a threat to the world. Afterwards, he whispers something to Dae-Wi before his entire body disintegrates into nothing, leaving only the headband that Dae-Wi and Meera had given him in the past. Beelzebub then flies toward Dae-Wi and tells him that he shouldn't cry, because Huey was just a clone that got destroyed. Dae-Wi answers this unsolicited advice by whacking Beelzebub in the face with a solid punch. Other gods like Uriel, Michael, and Garuda then rush in to gang up on Dae-Wi, but he doesn't pay attention to any of them and instead focuses on beating Beelzebub's face to a pulp. On the ground, Odin tells Mandak to step aside so that he could go around against Taijin. Mandak does as he's told, as the god prepares to fight the God of Fight candidate. Bong-Chim then tries to challenge Odin, but the god proceeds to beat the two martial arts masters at supersonic speed. To add insult to injury, Odin tells Taijin that he should have just taken Okwang's deal to become the new god of fight without any fuss, telling him that he would have been much better for the position compared to the late Princess of Natak. Somewhere else, the Monkey Warriors and Dae-Wi's Knox loyalists wonder if they've won the war now that most of the enemy forces have been thwarted. However, R opens up the gate to the third heavenly realm and lets out 400,076,000 apostles, an army made up of gigantic angels and other monsters. Somewhere else, the Knox loyalists and the rest of the Sage Realm's warriors know that they can't beat this new threat. Still, they fight valiantly and tell one another that they just need to hold off long enough for their king, Dae-Wi, to return and aid them. Not too far away though, we see that Dae-Wi has been knocked out. Michael can't help but notice that Dae-Wi really didn't pay them any mind when they attacked, instead choosing to focus all his attacks on Beelzebub. Beelzebub is super bitter after getting his face repeatedly smashed in attempts to stomp on Dae-Wi's unconscious body. However, Uriel tells him to calm down until they extract one of Dae-Wi's eyes. In space, both Heite, still in his Lycorn form, and the Unknown take a breather to reset their clash. Meanwhile, we find out that everyone from Pum Wang to Gamdo to Gyeom-ji have currently found themselves in a pinch as their enemies press on and attack them. Finally, Dae-Wi regains consciousness and gets back on his feet. Just in time too, because his army is now currently losing against the newly arrived threat from the third heavenly realm. In fact, a gigantic shadow looms high above the clouds, which Garuda identifies as the lord of the third heavenly realm. But Dae-Wi remains vigilant. He challenges the gods to come at him all at once, and they rush towards him. Beelzebub tries to gouge out Dae-Wi's eye, but a powerful force suddenly arrives on the scene. Dae-Wi then talks to someone and tells them that they're late. The gods turn to see that none other than the original Monkey King, Jin Mo-Ri, has finally arrived to join the fight. In fact, he had already managed to bisect Beelzebub the moment he got there. Mori takes a second to apologize to Dae-Wi, and it's business time from there. In a matter of seconds, Jin Mo-Ri carves his way through the 400,076,000 apostles, destroying scores of them in one fell swoop. In a flashback, we find that Huey told Dae-Wi that Jin Mo-Ri was in the heavenly realm before he died. In turn, he got this information from Uma and Beck, who explained to Huey that the third heavenly realm was the closest dimension to the Sage Realm. So, given that there's no more Sage Realm and they knew Jin Mo-Ri was alive and well, he could have only been in one place, the third heavenly realm. In the present, Mori picks up a strand of hair belonging to Huey that he finds on Dae-Wi's collar. This transfers all of Huey's memories and experiences to Mori, and he sees how his clone protected Dae-Wi and their friends up until the end. Mori then tells Huey's spirit that he can leave the rest to him, as the Monkey King summons thousands of copies of himself to surround the gods. Before attacking though, Mori holds a proper send-off for Huey by blowing the strand of hair in his palm. This makes everyone in the area witness Huey's entire life story. By the time it ends, rain falls all over the city and the citizens of Seoul witness a dragon made of clouds appear in the sky. Mori then wraps Huey's headband around his wrist and prepares to bring the ruckus on the gods of the heavenly realm. We then get more details on how exactly Jin Mo-Ri managed to free himself from the third heavenly realm. It turns out that even the other gods knew how Mori was laying waste to the various lords of the skyscraper. In fact, Mori caused so much chaos in the third heavenly realm that this became a major reason for the other gods to agree to R's plan of relocating themselves to the human realm out of fear that the Monkey King would come for them next. Flash forward to Beck and Uma's meeting with Garuda, and we find out that they became aware that Jin Mo-Ri was currently trapped in the third heavenly realm because Garuda told them all about it. At that time, Mori and Ilpio had sprung their plan to blitz through the remaining floors of the skyscraper. We even get confirmation from Ilpio that the skyscraper itself wasn't just part of the Sage Realm's ruins, it's the actual third heavenly realm. They eventually reached the third floor where they came face to face with the Godmaster Shiva. At that moment, a portal to the human realm opened behind Shiva, calling for her to come with the other gods. So both Mori and Ilpio took advantage of this and rushed straight for the gateway. Now if you're wondering why Ilpio isn't with Mori in the present, it's because of this particular moment right here. We find out that Ilpio chose to stay behind and subdue Shiva so that he could give Mori an opening to enter the portal and successfully return to the human realm. In the present, Beck and Uma confront R and ask him if bringing back Jin Mo-Ri is part of his master plan, a question that R answers only with his trademark mysterious smile. Somewhere else, Mori rescues an unconscious Su-Jin before spotting his grandpa and reuniting with the old man. Taijin and Mori greet each other with their classic Taekwondo clash and the two catch up with each other. The two guys get so into it that it takes Bong-Chim slapping the two of them to get their heads back in the game. Mori is just about ready to kick Odin's butt when Taijin tells him to just take care of his business while he deals with this god. Mori agrees and leaves, while Taijin tells Odin that he's well aware of their power gap. So to make things fair, Taijin tells Odin that Bong-Chim will face him as well. Odin wonders how Bong-Chim survived after he stabbed him in the heart, to which Bong-Chim replies and tells Odin that it's because he's the godly doctor. Mori then heads back to Dae-Wi's side and asks him if they're ready to start this fight for real. The gods think they still have the edge. Michael admits that even though Mori can flatline each one of them the same way he did with the lords of the skyscraper, his journey through the third heavenly realm will most likely have depleted the Monkey King's energy reserves significantly. However, Michael pauses when he hears Dae-Wi tell them that this is only the second time that he's seen Jin Mo-Ri this infuriated. While in the middle of the battlefield, Mori single-handedly massacres wave upon wave of angels coming his way. He then grabs Yui and makes one of the most hair-raising proclamations in all of God of High School, as he tells his clones that they're going to hold a funeral for Mori Huey on top of the dead bodies of their 400,076,000 enemies. In space, the unknown starts to drip cold beads of sweat on his forehead when he sees that the same guy who handed his butt to him during the Great War has returned. Hate gets distracted when he sees the look on the unknown's face, but fair play to this gigantic god, because he uses this as an opening to blast Hate and knock him out with his breath. Dae-Wi senses Hate and Mori tell his best friend to go after the good boy while he deals with the rest of the gods on Earth. While high above the sky, Satan gets the tingles when he sees Mori and becomes excited at the prospect of killing the Monkey King. In turn, Mori spots Satan and acknowledges that he might be a problem. He puts it off in the meantime as Beelzebub regenerates and squares up to Mori. Beelzebub runs his mouth, but the Monkey King shuts it with a well-deserved smack to the face. Mori then proceeds to assault Beelzebub with unanswered strikes, ultimately flatlining him again by straight up dropping an expanded Yui on his head. Michael tries to surprise Mori with his blade after that, but he uses his Monkey King armor to catch the Judgment Swords and break them with his bare hands. Mori then teleports right in front of Michael's face, but Uriel intervenes and kicks the Monkey King. Both Uriel and Mori crash into the ground. When the dust settles, we see that Mori has easily knocked her out. However, Garuda suddenly swooshes behind Mori and lands a blow on him. Garuda tries to hit Mori with a 12-6 elbow, but the Monkey King dodges it. Michael then manages to stab Mori with one of his blades and arrogantly taunts the Monkey King. The Archangel gets humbled again when he sees that Mori has instantly recovered and appeared beside him. Mori then uses his Monkey King armor's speed mode, Torment, to obliterate Michael's giant swords again. Still, Mori can feel the exhaustion from exerting himself like this. According to him, he had originally planned on saving up his stamina for that white kid Satan. There's no time to dwell on it though, as Uriel recovers and tries to attack Mori again. She lands a punch on his face, but Mori just eats it up before giving her a taste of his trademark Wei Choke technique, causing Uriel's head to bounce around like a pinball from his invisible strikes. The technique culminates with Uriel getting engulfed in a whirlwind of hits that knocks the air out of her. But Mori is then assaulted by a bunch of poison feathers which Garuda shot at him. We then see the gods of the Heavenly Realm each activating their Phase 2 transformations, as Garuda, Michael, and Uriel prepare to mount a counterattack against the Monkey King. Mori remains calm as a cucumber and simply orders his clones to throw each of their Yoi in the sky. Then, Mori summons all 3 of his magical artifacts, the original Yoi, his magical cloud Gyeonduon, and the Monkey King's gourd. He then activates an ability called Jehongdasung's skill, Weapon of the 3 Gods. Michael and his crew notice this and rush towards Mori to try and beat him to the punch, as thousands of Yoi sprout all over the ground and a giant flash of light gradually engulfs the horizon. We find out that this same explosion was caused when the 3 gods clashed with the Monkey King. Moments later, the dust settles as Garuda, Michael, and Uriel see Mori lying on the ground with numerous blades stuck in his body. The gods think they've won, and Uriel proceeds to pick up Yoi. She strains a bit but ultimately lifts it overhead, and then she starts to gloat about how overrated the rumors about Yoi's weight really were. According to her, the Monkey King's staff is child's play for someone as strong as her. Her showboating quickly turns into a look of shock when she hears Mori's voice laughing behind her. The 3 gods realize that Mori has duped them by trading places with one of his clones during the clash. Mori then tells Uriel that he's holding the real Yoi and tosses it over to her. Uriel dumbfoundedly catches it and she gets some much-deserved comeuppance when the original Yoi straight up snaps both of her arms off due to its weight. Mori then picks up Yoi and this time, it's his turn to talk some trash. He tells Uriel that the Prince of Natak managed to dent Yoi during their fight in the past, but Mori guesses that Uriel is probably just a scrub compared to that guy. Uriel gets put in her place, while Michael rushes in to attack Mori and tell his fellow gods that clone or not, Mori's power levels are still the same. Mori laughs at Michael and tells him he's right, except he had already cut down the number of his clones to a third of their original number to further concentrate his strength. Plus, he even managed to sabotage the god's sky castle along the way. Mori wastes no time and proceeds to give Michael a cracking body shot. Uriel tries to back him up, but Mori just knocks her out again with Bong-Chim Na style, Blood Vessel Bong-Chim. Garuda then activates his Phase 3 transformation called Phoenix Mode, but Mori just beats the lights out of the big bird. All of a sudden, Beelzebub appears behind Mori and impales him with his hand. Beelzebub tries to run his mouth again, but he falls quiet when he notices that he just stabbed another one of Mori's clones, because right now, the original Monkey King and his copies are hovering over them as they all activate Speed Mode. The Monkey King and his clones then clash with the 4 gods and it culminates with Mori using his Thunderbreaker ×100 technique to put a definitive end to these arrogant gods. Mori then dedicates this win to all his fallen friends and everyone who died during this whole debacle, as Uriel and her companions slowly fade into nothing on the ground. Shao Chen even witnesses Uriel dying right before her very eyes, and the Knox bishop takes pity on the fallen god. Meanwhile, Mori tells a transformed Beelzebub to go back to wherever he came from and he'll spare his life. Beelzebub takes the L and walks away, but he's suddenly crushed to death by an invisible force. Mori senses it and sees that it was Mu-Jin who just killed Beelzebub. He then tells Mori that they've successfully gotten their revenge against the gods and it's time to rest now. But Mori has other ideas. Instead, he walks toward that white kid Satan and challenges him to a scrap. On the ground, Odin senses that most of his comrades have died already and wonders how it's possible. He then turns to Taijin and Bong-Chim, who are revealed to be on the losing end of their bout, and tells the 2 old men that he respects how humans are able to overcome their weaknesses on their own. He prepares to clash with Taijin and Bong-Chim again, but one of his Valkyries arrives to tell Odin that they're rapidly losing the war against their enemies at this point, so the Valkyrie advises Odin to go somewhere safe. Odin then starts to go on a monologue about how the Ragnarok prophecy states that the entire universe will bow before a single master after this war ends. Odin originally thought that he and the other gods were the master that the prophecy was talking about, but he now realizes that it might very well be none other than Jin Mo-Ri. In fact, he even dubs the Monkey King as the almighty god of the universe, especially after reminding himself of all the epic battles he's been through over the ages. On the other hand, Odin is still not fully convinced just yet. According to him, there's still one hurdle that Mori has to go through to claim that title, and it's Satan. Back at Mori, he and that white kid Satan get in a pissing contest about who could beat the other gods faster. In the end though, Satan tells Mori to rest up for a bit so that their fight would be fair. Mori accepts the offer and asks Satan why he's not mad that he killed all of his friends. Hearing this, the god tells Mori that he really doesn't give a toss about the other gods. He's just interested in fighting the Monkey King. Not long after that, Mori and Satan end their break and proceed to do some stretches. Once they're done, we're treated to an immediate intense clash between these 2 powerful contestants. It's a brutal affair, as Mori and Satan headbutt each other right out of the gate. They then trade blows before Mori's opponent activates his Phase 2 transformation, which unleashes Satan's wings. But Mori isn't fazed by this. He simply teleports behind his opponent using speed mode and kicks Satan so hard that they both shoot through the bottom of the ocean. A second later, and the god comes flying out of the water when Mori lands a punch on his face. In turn, Satan activates his Satan armor, El Diablo, while Mori transforms his suit into its power mode form. The two combatants go at it again, as Mori lands a clean body shot on his opponent. Satan feels his ribs crack from the impact, as Mori tells him to stop messing around. Another second later, we find out that Satan has managed to copy Mori's copy ability, creating an army of his own clones. Mori just hops on Gyun-Dawoon and carves a path through his enemy's clone army, effectively destroying each and every one of them and clearing the battlefield. The two fighters clash in the air again. This time, Satan manages to get the better of Mori and stomp on him in the midsection. However, Mori counters by slicing off both of his opponent's legs. Satan manages to dodge away and regenerate his limbs, as the two warriors prepare for another clash. Well, suffice it to say that they're not playing around, and Mori and Satan go at each other hard at close quarters. They don't summon any techniques or abilities, as the two just do each of their best to try and bash their opponent's face in. They're evenly matched too, as the Monkey King and the god continuously go strike for strike, dodging and weaving each other's attacks. Mori continues to focus, and we find out that Satan can indeed read people's minds, as he responds to Mori's thoughts in the middle of their battle. Their fistfight just keeps getting more and more intense by the second, and it all culminates with the two fighters punching each other's fists. The impact from their clash causes the ground beneath them to crumble and hot lava to rise up. They then take to the skies and crash through the already destroyed Sky Castle, ultimately turning the colossal structure into rubble once they pass through it. They get back on the ground and Satan notices that Mori has been trying to gain some distance between them. So he grabs the Monkey King by the leg and slams him into the ground. He then creates clones of himself, but Mori counters this by shooting down the clones with thunderbolts. He and Satan get into another close quarters clash. After a brief struggle, Satan tries to blast Mori with energy, but he's able to block it with Yoi. However, Mori's opponent follows up by hitting him with another copy technique called Ri Taekwondo, Homi Gyoli. It's revealed that Satan is able to copy these abilities using his telepathy. He then successfully steals Mori's Bong-Chim Na style, Ye Bong-Chim times 52, and uses it on himself. Satan then lunges at Mori, which forces the Monkey King to counter with a thunderbolt. Satan dodges it, but this gives the Monkey King enough of an opening to summon his gourd. He orders it to absorb Satan, but Mori realizes that it's not going to work, because the gourd got cracked during his clash against Uriel and the others. So Mori flips the script and instead commands his gourd to spit out. He then uses the force from the gourd to launch himself into outer space and seemingly escape his bout against Satan. A couple of moments later, we see that the Monkey King's gourd is cracked and shattered after losing all of its energy, taking Mori into outer space. His opponent follows suit and hits him with a solid knee to the midsection before barraging him with punches. All the while, the Monkey King endures the onslaught and counts down from 8 to 1. We then find out that Mori wasn't trying to escape in the first place. This was all part of his plan to wait out Satan's Bong-Chim times 52 technique's eventual rebound. But in true God of High School fashion, Satan pulls out a trump card and tells Mori that he could compensate for the rebound because his horns and wings absorb light and heat. In fact, the little devil didn't even know about this until he hid out on the dark side of the moon earlier. He then challenges Mori to see who's the strongest warrior between the two of them, as he literally punches the Monkey King into the sun. After that, Satan rushes into the Red Giant and repeatedly brings the beat down on Mori inside the sun. They then try to one-up each other verbally again when the little devil brags about how the sun's heat doesn't affect him. Mori hears this and says he's felt hotter climates when he stayed up for 49 days at the Pao-Goi Bagua furnace. Satan gets all bitter and tries to impress Mori by creating a lot of clones. So many, in fact, that the Monkey King thinks that the entire universe has gone white, and it's because that white kid Satan just literally created more than 200 quadrillion copies of himself. However, Mori's opponent is surprised when he discovers that the Monkey King has been planning this all along. He didn't just fly into space to wait for Satan's Bong-Chim rebound. Mori made sure to keep their fight as far away from Earth as possible to make sure that no innocents are harmed by what he's about to do. Mori then activates Bong-Chim 250,000 times and defeats all 200 quadrillion of his enemy's clones. Satan tries to copy Mori's Bong-Chim 250,000 times, but he's too slow, as Mori teleports behind him and incapacitates the little devil with Bong-Chim Na style, Blood Vessel Bong-Chim. Mori then tells his opponent that he's the strongest combatant he has ever fought and asks Satan if he's ready to take the loss and call it a day. The god from the heavenly realm doesn't accept it and instead uses a technique called 666 Hellraiser. However, Mori has had enough of the brat, so he assaults Satan with a series of powerful techniques like Kick of the Red Phoenix, Puma Og Seller, Pumbaa Gut Stab, and Ri Taekwondo Goryo. The young devil's body gets torn to pieces so hard that when he starts having a flashback to a time when Beelzebub told Satan that he'll always be second to the Monkey King. This motivates him to fight some more in the present and declare himself the champion among gods. He then activates his Phase 3 transformation and tells the Monkey King that he's the greatest of all time. But then we immediately find out that Satan was just blowing smoke out of his hole when Mori gives him a beating with Mori Huey, complete gift package the moment he declares himself as the best ever. Still, you've got to give credit to Satan and his iron chin. He doesn't get knocked out after the barrage. Instead, he recovers and channels the power of the sun and shoots a colossal beam of hot light toward the Monkey King. Unsurprisingly, Mori literally kicks the energy beam and vars it in half until he reaches his opponent and gives Satan a taste of Re-Taekwondo Jin Hui-Chok 250,000X. All the while, Mori channels the spirit of his late clone Huey to deliver the finishing blow. Suffice it to say that this super intense galactic martial arts battle didn't just shake the planets, it literally turned off the universe for a moment. That's right guys, Mori kicked the devil so hard that it gave the universe a premature heat death that lasted a nanosecond. A quick flashback shows that Mori trained how to use the Bong-Chim 250,000X technique back when he was trapped inside the third heavenly realm. We then find out that Bong-Chim's rebound is much harder on Mori when he's in his Monkey King form. In the present, Mori screams as he finally starts to feel the rebound from his Bong-Chim 250,000 times technique. A few moments later, he recovers and sees that he's flown far away from Earth. However, he also turns around to see that his job isn't quite done yet, because Satan survived Mori's universe-ending kick earlier. His opponent then drags the both of them back to Earth and they crash into a mountain. Satan unleashes his right-wing freed ability and tries to slice up Mori with his claws. However, the attack does not land and the two combatants discover that Dae-Wi used his gravitational powers to redirect the trajectory of Satan's attack. In space, we find out that Dae-Wi and Hate have already knocked out the unknown. Back on the ground, the devil is annoyed that Dae-Wi intervened with his bout with Mori. He then uses his left-wing freed technique, while Mori remembers a teaching he learned in the past. The Monkey King then meets his opponent head-on and they kick each other so hard that Mori's shirt rips off. Mori then finds an opening and gives Satan a super powerful kick that literally makes the devil cry. They reset for a moment and a specter of a woman appears in front of Mori. He talks to it and realizes that this is the same ghost that has been protecting him this whole time. Meanwhile, the little devil wonders why he's feeling this sense that he'll never be able to beat Mori no matter what he does. Mori then talks some smack and asks his opponent what's gotten him so scared all of a sudden. That's because in Satan's mind, Mori isn't just an ordinary warrior. He thinks that the Monkey King is a supreme god. Mori approaches his opponent and the little guy starts to tremble, screaming for the Monkey King to get away from him. Angels arrive to protect Satan, but the boy lashes out all of a sudden and tells his crew that he doesn't need their help. Satan starts to have a tantrum while Mori continues to add fuel to the fire and mock his leadership skills. He even clowns around and lies to the boy, telling the little devil that he's better than him, just as Mori is about to plant his foot on the young god's face. Far away, Jin Taijin senses that Mori has mastered another powerful technique. And this one doesn't sound like a word salad. It's a move simply called dead-on kick. And you guessed it right guys, Mori just kicked Satan dead on. The dust settles and Mori waits to see if the little devil still has some fight in him. But Odin suddenly appears and declares the bout a win for Mori. Not only that, but Odin tells the Monkey King that he and his forces have won the war by unanimous decision. Given that all the gods have been completely defeated, Odin then gives Mori the title of Lord of the Heavens and Supreme God. We then get caught up to speed with the rest of Mu-Jin's resistance group in a flashback from when Mori and Satan were duking it out in space, as we find out that Judge P has just finished dueling with the former Judge T. They're almost evenly matched, but T edges out P when she passes out. Still, he might have won the battle, but they lost the war, as Mu-Jin and the other judges surround T and tell him that his faction has already lost. Meanwhile, Judges Q and B take a quick smoke break while keeping an eye on the downed Drake McDonald. Drake tries to get up and keep the fight going, but Q and B just throw shade at him for not knowing when to quit. Still, Q admits that Drake had the right idea of motivating himself to get stronger, as he walks away and hands his pack of smokes to B, telling his fellow judge that he's quitting the filthy habit. The resistance group then surrounds Mandoc, and you can bet that Mu-Jin is enjoying his rival's defeat. But Mandoc slips away from their custody when he teleports himself, Drake, and T away. Nearby, Kim can't believe his eyes when he sees just how powerful Taijin and Bong-Chim are. According to him, his own martial prowess couldn't hold a candle to these old guys even though Kim himself is a member of the Six. In the middle of the battlefield, Bong-Chim and Taijin continue their fight with Odin. Bong-Chim reminisces about how he considered Taijin his greatest rival ever since he defeated the Six almost a couple of decades ago. To Bong-Chim, Taijin would have been his best friend under different circumstances. Still, he doesn't get his head out of the game, as he braces for another clash with Odin. The Norse god impales Bong-Chim with his hand, but the old man just uses this opportunity to subdue their opponent. This gives Taijin an opening to put an end to Odin. We find out that Taijin is now entering a whole new stage of martial arts because of this fight. Somewhere else, Meera meets with the senior members of the Homos Association and they unanimously vote for her to be the new 28th head of their organization. As a sweet bonus, Meera even gains access to the ultra-rare national treasure, the Blade of Tathagata, after being voted as the National Homos Association's new leader. Back at Odin, we find out that Taijin's final strike didn't land on his opponent, as the Norse god manages to catch his kick with his left hand. Taijin asks Odin why he kept himself from using his left arm until now, to which his opponent replies that it's to even the playing field. Taijin tries to go for a follow-up strike, but Odin catches him by the neck. He then asks the martial arts master why he didn't just agree to becoming the new god of fight. In answer to that, Taijin points to Bong-Chim and pretty much tells Odin how much he admires the old doctor. That's because unlike gods or borrowed power users, Bong-Chim solely relied on his own abilities as a martial artist to become strong. Taijin tells Odin that he shares the same sentiment. To him, becoming a god would be super boring, since he'll just be handed power without working hard for it. We then get the big reveal that Taijin's powerful kick, the one that Odin caught earlier, is an immensely powerful technique that manages to shatter Odin's entire left arm from the inside like a time delay explosive. According to Taijin, he was originally aiming for Odin's one good eye earlier. The Taekwondo master tells the god that if he managed to land that strike clean, Odin would have been split in half with no way to recover. Meanwhile, Odin goes for one last ditch effort to stab Taijin with his bare hand. Taijin knows he can't block this one and braces for imminent impact, but Bong-Chim springs into action and paralyzes Odin with his Tai Chi before he could strike Taijin. Odin then activates his Phase 2 Valhalla ability to knock back his opponents. The Norse god is unable to follow up on it, however. Instead, he tells Taijin and Bong-Chim that perhaps the gods underestimated humanity's power, as Odin walks away and admits his defeat. In the present, Mori and Odin iron out the details of what it means to be a supreme god. Odin explains that this title is the highest of all, being a step above Buddhahood. Mori then asks Odin where Taijin is, and the Norse god informs him that he's safe. In fact, we also find out that not only did Taijin's devastating kick obliterate Odin's arm, but it also successfully blinded his one remaining eye. Odin then proposes to Mori to let him and the other surviving gods live. In return, they'd become humanity's protectors. Mu-Jin arrives and expresses his doubt about Odin's offer, but Mori shares the same concern. So he asks Odin how exactly they could trust that the gods would stop hassling the human realm, much less become its new guardians. Odin replies by telling Mori that he's going to write a pledge for the core element. He then explains that the core element is the same floating cube that Mori received after defeating the Lord of the Skyscraper's 7th floor. It's an artifact that contains a god's life and essence. Odin goes so far as to explain that the Mori receiving the 7th floor's core element signifies that its lord has handed over its will to Mori and knows him as its new master. Odin then tells the Monkey King that they're going to write the pledge within that artifact. Satan hears all this and starts to whine about why he didn't receive the core element even though he defeated the 7th floor's lord as well. To answer his question, Odin pretty much tells the little devil that unlike Mori, he hasn't mastered the divine, human, and demonic skills. A few moments later, Dae-Wi arrives and Odin calls him the king of all humans. He tells them that Ragnarok has been a complete bust for the gods of the heavenly realm before preparing to write the pledge on the core element. Odin, Satan, Dae-Wi, and Mori then form a pact stating that the gods would never harm any species whatsoever and swear eternally to become guardians of both the human and demonic worlds. Not too far away, Judge P gripes about this whole pact, thinking that it's not right that these 4 individuals in front of them represent all of humanity. But Mu-Jin corrects her and tells P that the important thing is that they achieve their goals today. We then see the people of Seoul recovering from the disaster of the war. However, in a corner of the city, the warriors of the Sage Realm are still gearing for another fight. That's because R is still right in front of them. In a flashback from earlier, we find out that the reason Garuda told Uma and Beck about Mori's whereabouts was because he was trying to atone for his betrayal during the Great War. Sometime after that, Uma and Beck met with R, who opened up a portal for the Oxen King to lead her to her original body. Uma tells Beck that she's going to get it and won't be back for a while. She was just about ready to leave when Beck pulled her close and planted a kiss on the Oxen King's lips, making Uma promise to come back because he'd be waiting for her. In the present, the remaining Knox loyalist and Sage Realm army brace themselves to throw down with R. R then uses his powers to paralyze each and every one in the immediate vicinity. At the same time, Odin has just put the finishing touches on the pact they made with Mori and Dae-Wi. Odin bids them farewell, but Satan nudges him just as they're leaving. We then find out that Satan is a huge Jin Mo-Ri fanboy when Odin asks on his behalf if the little devil could shake his hand. Mori throws the kid a bone and tells Satan that he was a strong opponent and that they had one hell of a banger earlier. Odin then prepares to open a portal to the heavenly realm, but it's cut short when hundreds of Tams appear on the ground. The Tams then attack Odin and Satan along with the remaining Valkyries. In fact, the Tams have even started to eat the remains of the fallen angels all around the battlefield. Odin senses R's presence and lunges at him. The Norse god impales R, but he grabs Odin by the arm. Upon doing so, Odin is able to sense that R's goal is to devour the bodies of the gods. R gets cheeky and says, maybe, just as Satan rushes to help Odin free himself. R then orders his Tams to eat the 2 gods, but Mori steps in and uses his core element Skyscraper's 7th Master, Circle ability to cancel R's technique and trap him. He then tells R to cool his jets because the war is over now. Mori even explains that there's basically a non-aggression pact between humans, demons, and gods at this point. However, R finds a loophole in their agreement, telling Mori that the contract doesn't cover him. That's because R is neither human, demon, or god. He's just an abomination born from Okwang's experiments. Mu-Jin then approaches to tell R to give it up. In a way, R listens to his surrogate dad and tells Dae-Wi to be careful when using Okwang's powers. According to him, there's a chance that the King's spirit might overtake Dae-Wi's mind if he continues using them. Dae-Wi then passes out, which causes Mori to get distracted. R sees this as an opening, so he attacks Mori with a body blow. Meanwhile, the monkey warriors find out that they're now able to move again after R's paralyzing technique expires. Ryu is absolutely livid that R just ignored them, but one of his monkey warrior friends tells him that it might not be the case, that maybe R spared their lives by walking away from them. In the middle of the battlefield, Mori asks R what he did with the blade of Tathagata, to which he tells him that he has left it with a trace of his own life before handing it over to Meera. R then makes a formal challenge to Mori and activates his tam. The Monkey King notices that R's tam is significantly larger than the one that Jugal Tech had, as the tam fills the whole battlefield. Seconds later, an earthquake occurs and Mu-Jin notices that the tam isn't what's causing this. Odin tells him that the tremors are coming from the Heavenly Realm's castles and fortresses, which are trying to fuse with the world. The problem is that this procedure requires the gods' assistance, but since all the gods have either died or are currently out of energy, there's no way that they can guide the process. At the same time, the Tams have started devouring the innocent civilians of the city, and Odin points out that R is using the earthquake as an opportunity to unleash his Tams on the world. The situation gets so bad that even Jin Taijin gets eaten by a Tam. Not long after that, the black goo-like substance has spread all over the Korean peninsula. Mu-Jin notices that there's another layer to R's plan aside from simply covering the world with his tam, because at this moment, Knox's energy crystals have started to reawaken to form a gigantic sigil above South Korea. The sigil then starts absorbing vital energy from all around the world. Xiao Chen asks if the Tams are absorbing everyone's life force, but Mu-Jin corrects her. According to him, the Tams are sucking something out of everyone that they've eaten. R then talks about the taboo that the gods placed on humans to prevent them from attacking anyone from the heavenly realm. He likens it to a slave contract and explains that the taboo is pretty much a lock that can be opened with keys like Sujin and Ilpio. R, on the other hand, is planning on bypassing this process by straight up destroying the lock itself. He successfully does so and then unleashes the next phase of his plan, to let the Tam continue consuming everything until it consumes itself. Everything goes as R had anticipated. Curiously, the people who were eaten by the Tams earlier all get freed. Somewhere not too far away, Mansak asks his master Sujin if her powers disappeared after getting consumed by a Tam. Sujin then tells Mansak that the opposite happened. She now feels like she's overflowing with power after being freed from the black goo. Meanwhile, Xiao Chen asks R if he only stayed with Knox in order to learn about how the energy crystals work. R pretty much confirms it. More importantly, we find out that he used the Tams to fully remove the seals from the taboo and give humans what he calls true freedom. Then R declares that he still has one final thing to do. However, Mu-Jin gives him a good old-fashioned fatherly hug before R could make another move. He tells him that too many have already died and the world has already been devastated. In reply, R tells Mu-Jin that his plan would have taken 1,000,000 more years to accomplish, since he loves humans ever so much. R then taps Mu-Jin on the shoulder and tells his surrogate dad that he kept his promise and it's now time for Mu-Jin to hold up his end of the deal, to take the world in his hands. Hearing that, Mu-Jin says that the materials, such as his cross pendant and the Holy Grail, are ready. We then get the full lowdown on what excels going on between R and Mu-Jin. It's explained that both of them had the same goal, to free humanity from the taboo keeping them from harming gods. However, they differ when it comes to their respective plans' execution. For Mu-Jin, the best way to go about it is to prioritize the lives of innocent civilians by minimizing collateral damage. This is why he orchestrated a war with Knox using only a small number of elite warriors like the judges. On the other hand, R isn't as benevolent as Mu-Jin. R thinks the ends justify the means, so he didn't care about the casualties and damage that his own plan caused in order to remove the taboo. And fair play to R, he actually did it. We find out that Beck is the one explaining all this to Mori as he arrives to meet with his allies. Mori asks where Uma is, and Beck informs him that she's gone to the Heavenly Realm to look for her main body. Beck then asks R why he straight up betrayed Mu-Jin. In reply, R tells him that aside from removing the taboo, he had one other important goal, to get his revenge on Okwang. R understandably thinks that Okwang is an irredeemable monster who completely ruined his body and his life. He then goes on to rightfully chastise not only Okwang, but even all the remaining Knox cultists present around him. According to him, these people were Okwang's henchmen who silently supported the atrocities their late great leader committed. And now, it's ridiculous that they're playing the victim card just because R and his crew absolutely wrecked them. Mori then asks R what he would have done if his plan failed, to which R goes full-on revolutionary and says that it's better to die a free man than live as a slave. R asks Mori why he's being so salty right now, since his actions ultimately allowed the humans to achieve their independence. And again, R stresses the point that out of everyone who tried to unseal the taboo, he was the only one who actually did it. Sure, he knows that there were a lot of sacrifices, but R values hard-earned independence more than human lives. Mori hears this and gets livid, telling R that he has no right to decide that. Mori then assaults R as he berates him for putting the people he loves in danger while he stood there helplessly. We then go to a flashback where we see R's youth. We already know that he ate his own mom back when he was a baby and that he ultimately survived Okwang's termination order. But here's what's new. It turns out that an old random couple took him in after he ran away from Knox's lab. However, R eventually discovered that these geezers are actually a couple of cannibalistic psychos who wanted to eat him, thinking that his body could cure any disease. So R ran away again. In the present, R pretty much tells Mori to shut his mouth because he doesn't know what he's been through. And again, R has a point. Both gods and humans have been absolutely horrible to him almost all of his life. R then reveals that he wanted to pit humans and gods against one another so that they'd mutually destroy themselves. R continues to drop some truth bombs on Mori while beating him to a pulp, telling the Monkey King that Okwang might have made him into the abomination that he is, but it was humanity who performed all kinds of experiments and torture on him. On the sidelines, Odin wonders how R is absolutely overpowering Mori right now, to which Satan tells him that it's because Mori's all gassed out after fighting him. In addition to that, R has just absorbed the spirits of other gods like Zeus and Uriel, not to mention that he's also powered by his Tam. Simply put, today is R's lucky day to beat the Monkey King. In his flashback, we then find out that R was hunted by the townspeople like an animal after he ran away from the psycho couple. He eventually met a woman who genuinely treated him like a human being and took him in. This story didn't end well though, because the townspeople ultimately captured them. They branded the woman as a witch and burned her at the stake. Before dying though, she made R promise to always smile no matter how bad things got. In the present, Mori and R continue their fisticuffs. R ultimately reveals that all that drama aside, there's one other thing he wants: to finish off his showdown with Jin Mo-Ri, as the two warriors square up to each other yet again. Some distance away, we discover that Mu-Jin has told R's entire life story to the other judges, which makes him understand where all his hate is coming from. Nearby, Satan prepares to help Mori fight R, but Odin stops him from doing so. The older god explains that interfering with this fight would be a breach of the pact they made earlier, and it's not like that can do anything either. It turns out that their agreement is similar to the old taboo, that is to say, a barrier now forms whenever a god tries to harm a human. Mori and R continue to go at it at close quarters, as the Monkey King gains the edge over his opponent. R is puzzled that Mori can still fight after using all of his energy against Satan, but his thoughts are interrupted when Mori catches him in a Muay Thai clinch and drives his knee into R's face. All the while, R has another flashback about the time he first met Mu-Jin. Back then, R asked the man why he wanted to take him in, to which Mu-Jin told him that he needed the boy's power. In the present, Mori stops mid-punch when he sees R use Okwang's attraction ability on him before giving the Monkey King a powerful gut shot. R then reveals that he can use Okwang's powers to some extent after absorbing the old man's body. It's not as precise as the way Dae-Wi does it, but R tells Mori that he's a big threat to him right now, as he uses Okwang's powers to lift a giant boulder from the ground. He then molds the boulder and turns it into several spikes before hurling it at Mori. The Monkey King dodges the spikes, while Odin and Satan notice that his movements are becoming slow. The young devil explains that it's because of the Bong-Chim's rebound. Meanwhile, R applies the things that Mu-Jin taught him growing up, particularly how to deliver a straight punch. R catches Mori with a clean strike before proceeding to assault his opponent with successive attacks. All of a sudden, Satan notices Odin passing out. A second later, we find out that the reason behind this is because R has successfully used Odin as his new borrowed power. Another moment passes and even Satan loses consciousness, and we discover that R has also borrowed the little devil's power. To make matters worse, R is able to simultaneously use the borrowed power not just from these two gods, but even the ones that he's absorbed earlier. We then catch up with Ilpio. When we last left him, the nine-tailed fox had just started his duel with the lord of the third floor of the skyscraper, Master Shiva. Now we see that Shiva has seemingly knocked out Ilpio, as she gloats about her victory. However, her celebration is cut short when R unseals the taboo in the human realm, which allows Ilpio to regain his strength. Not only that, but the nine-tailed fox feels stronger than ever. Ilpio then proceeds to go for some payback against Shiva. He opens with his Hajosa ninth tail unleashed transformation before hitting Shiva with a technique called Hajosa Bekkia Hang. Shiva rushes in to meet Ilpio in the middle of the battlefield, as he unleashes Samsu Taikyan Semyon Mialdagak. On the other end, Shiva uses God Hand Krishna. The entire floor is engulfed in a swirl of fire and water from their respective abilities. They clash and ultra-hot steam covers the whole place. In the aftermath, Ilpio sees a downed Shiva and he taunts her to get up. Suddenly, God Hand Krishna grabs Ilpio from behind. He breaks free from the hold and rushes toward Shiva to fully take her out and cancel God Hand Krishna. We find out that Shiva has been playing possum all along. She also reveals that God Hand Krishna isn't just a technique. He's actually another god who used to rule over the third floor of Skyscraper. Shiva defeated God Hand Krishna in the past and has since become her servant. Ilpio listens to all of this, and when she's done explaining the situation, the nine-tailed fox also summons a god under his control. This time, Ilpio calls the master of the sixth floor, Praltriller, to deal with God Hand Krishna while Ilpio himself fights Shiva. They fight each other at close quarters until Shiva notices Ilpio turning his head. Shiva thinks it's an opening, but she soon finds out that Ilpio's tricked her, distracting Shiva from Praltriller's gigantic foot that's about to stomp on her. The foot stomps on Shiva, but she uses all her strength to keep it at bay and hold it overhead. She starts threatening Ilpio, telling him that she's going to eat him once she frees herself from Prowltroller's foot. In reply, Ilpio approaches Shiva and does some tickle torture on her to force Shiva into letting go of the foot and allowing it to fully step on her. The dust settles and Shiva accepts her defeat. She and Ilpio do a quick analysis of how their fight went down. In the end, Ilpio tells Shiva that he won because he had luck on his side. With their fight over and done with, Ilpio then asks Shiva how he could go back to the human realm. Meanwhile, Mori and R are about to go for another clash. Mori feels pressured when R unleashes his whole arsenal of borrowed power. He starts by summoning Zeus to punch Mori. The Monkey King blocks it and blows a hole through Zeus's torso, but Michael appears and tries to slash him with his blade. Mori dodges again and destroys Michael's spirit with a kick. The rest of the gods, like Poseidon, Athena, Hades, and Hera, gang up on Mori after that. He defeats the 3 Greek gods only to find that Odin and Satan are already rushing toward him. Mori then uses his core element to call upon the Lord of the Skyscraper's 7th floor to assist him in battle. The 7th floor's Lord helps Mori and subdues Odin with its spikes. Satan manages to slip through and lunge toward the Monkey King, but the little devil stops mid-punch, prompting Mori to discover that R's control over the other gods is still imperfect, since Satan was able to stop attacking Mori of his own accord. Mori then kicks Satan, and this allows R's hold on him and Odin to break. The 2 gods wake up in their own bodies, but Mori's fight with the other god spirits isn't done yet. But knowing that R's control over his borrowed power is weak, Mori is able to take out the gang of gods with a single blow. R then reveals that he was just using his borrowed powers to distract Mori before attempting to stab him with his bare hand, but the Monkey King locks R's arm and proceeds to counter with a right cross to his opponent's face. Mori then talks massive smack, telling R to bite down because he's going in hard, as Mori knocks R away with an overhand left. All the while, Mori continues to berate his opponent for playing with people's lives. R finds an opening and strikes Mori in the face while defending his side of the argument. Mori tries to counter with a jab, but R hits him with a classic Stockton slap to cancel it. The 2 trade blows for a few seconds until Mori sees a hole in R's defense and goes for a body kick. R catches Mori's leg, takes him down, and goes for a full mount. He then prepares to ground and pound the Monkey King, but Mori scrambles and gets on top of R to smash him with an overhand left. The 2 then step back a bit to reset their clash. R tells Mori that he wishes to kill humans because he hates them, which causes Mori to lunge at R and hit him with another powerful punch. The 2 combatants then get into another scuffle, trading blows while they argue with each other. Eventually, R loses his temper and asks Mori if he has any idea what humanity has done to him. Fair play to Mori too, because he replies by saying he has no clue, since R never told him about it. Mori then berates R for not sharing his feelings with people, which explains why he's so angry right now. Tensions rise further as the 2 trade more blows while R chastises Mori for being a naive little boy. For the first time, Mori sees R lose his temper as his opponent rages and yells at Mori. In turn, the Monkey King praises R for letting out his feelings and allowing himself to feel genuinely angry for once. Mori tells R that this makes him appear like a real person. Hearing those words makes R remember the woman who took care of him in the past. Still, he doesn't back down and continues to find ways to grind Mori's gears. Mori loses his patience when R tells him that he transplanted his cells to Meera's severed right arm. Because of this, R now has Meera's life in his hands. He then activates his cells within Meera, which causes her to writhe in pain. He then uses his cells to remotely kill Meera on the spot and tells Mori about it. R then proves his point and taunts Mori, telling him to see if he can forgive R for what he just did to Meera. He then summons his Tam and lunges toward Mori as the Monkey King loads up his renewal recoilless kick. We then find out that R actually wants to be taken out, as he stands there and waits for Mori to end his life with the kick. He closes his eyes and braces for impact but sees that Q is standing between them when he opens his eyes. Q and the other judges then console R and basically tell him that he's not alone in this world. The judges then tell R that they're all in this together, so they're willing to take responsibility for his crimes. Mu-Jin approaches and advises R to ask for the other judges' forgiveness. For a moment, we see that R has finally realized the error of his ways. However, their conversation is cut short when the huge sword skewers R from behind. We find out that Mandoc has reappeared, and the Mad Lad berates R for deceiving him. You see, R promised Mandoc that they'll destroy the world together, so he's not having any of this change of heart crap that R is suddenly experiencing. Mu-Jin cradles R and wonders if Mandoc poisoned him. The crazy fanatic then turns to his old rival and blames him for foiling his plans. The judges try to subdue Mandoc, but he teleports away like a coward before they could clash. Mu-Jin tells R to hang in there, but he's just too weak now. So much so that he takes these last few remaining moments remembering his motto, smile and good things will happen. Q is absolutely livid that they allowed Mandoc to get away, but Judge S tells him that he felt something on his fingertips earlier, something that not even Mandoc could be safe from. In the meantime, Mu-Jin wonders why the wound that Mandoc left him won't stop bleeding even though he has Tam inside of him. R tells his surrogate dad that since Mandoc is pretty much an expert on Tam, he probably added something to his sword that would prevent R from healing it. Q then pays his respects to R, in his own way at least, as the two men bring up their rivalry again. Meanwhile, Mu-Jin asks R if he had used up all his Tam in breaking the taboo seal earlier. Mori steps in and wonders why R didn't use Oaklang's power at the end of their duel. R then uses what's left of his strength to get back on his feet. As he tells Mori a little secret, we find out that he really didn't kill Meera. as we see her waking up in another part of the city surrounded by her homeless association lieutenants. Meera then sits up just as a landslide occurs right above her and her companions. She then draws out Tathagata and protects everyone with it with a single swing of the sword, nullifying the landslide and molding it into a huge ball of dirt. R then drops the revelation that he passed all of the king's power residing in him to Meera. According to R, Meera and Dae-Wi are now bound by fate and that they're going to meet each other again someday. Meanwhile, we see that a wounded Mandoc has escaped deep in the woods with a woman suspended inside a chemical chamber who he calls his sis. Not long after that, Meera eventually spots Mandoc, who senses Okwang's power inside her. Mandoc thinks this is the end for him, knowing that Meera is going to take him out at this instant. But the bombshells just keep on dropping as we find out another shocker. Meera has amnesia. The only thing she knows right now is that looking at Mandoc reminds her of someone precious, Dae-Wi, although she can't remember who exactly it is. Meera starts crying and we find out that amnesia has hit her so hard that she now doesn't even know the concept of tears anymore. At the same time, her homeless association lieutenants panic and tell their new leader that she must take out Mandoc because he's one of the bad guys. Mandoc then interprets Meera's amnesia as her giving him another chance. He then surprisingly bends the knee in front of Meera and names her the next Jade Emperor. From here, we find out that the National Homeless Association and former Knox members loyal to Mandoc have banded together to form an entirely new organization called Knox. The story's narrator even tells us that Meera would eventually be known both as the White Witch who ruled the West and that she'll eventually become a member of the Six. Somewhere else, Mori presses R to tell him where exactly Meera is right now, but R repeats that he hates humans, so he's not going to tell Mori anything. And with that, R bids everyone farewell, specifically thanking Mu-Jin for everything and telling the man to uphold his promise. R passes on and his entire body disappears. In the afterlife, he's reunited with the woman who cared for her in the past and taught him the value of a smile. And we find out this woman's name is Rhea. Not too far away, Taijin and Bong-Chim take a load off after their brutal fight with Odin. Taijin, as usual, tries to keep their spirits up while Bong-Chim remains silent. That's because at this moment, Bong-Chim knows that he's about to lose his life from the wound he suffered earlier. Bong-Chim is well aware that his body couldn't handle the combination of this injury and the rebound from using his Jo-Bong-Chim technique. He then uses the last of his strength to have one last talk with Taijin, but the two unsurprisingly end up arguing with each other. In the end, we find out that Bong-Chim was trying to tell Taijin that he has some slight regrets about his own life. According to him, he would have reached a higher level than now if only he met Taijin earlier in his life. Bong-Chim finally passes on and Taijin realizes that he's lost his old friend and rival. The narrator then tells us that Na Bong-Chim's complete martial arts style was never passed on to the next generation, since he didn't take on a disciple. However, his book named First Class Oriental Acupuncture eventually became one of the most important references for both martial artists and borrowed power users. We even find out that the world of God of High School would eventually be embroiled in an altercation called the Acupuncture War Generations in the future. But the manhwa explicitly states that we're not going to see it within the pages of God of High School. Meanwhile, Mori checks up on Dae-Wi, who is currently being watched over by Xiao Chen. Mori finds out that Dae-Wi's body had been greatly damaged from the fights he had participated in during the war. Odin then tells him that the reason behind this is because Dae-Wi's human body is not nearly enough to control Okwang's power. You see, Dae-Wi only inherited the king's mind. In order for Dae-Wi to not feel any negative side effects from using it, he has to obtain the king's body as well, the same power that now resides within Meera. Odin then gives Mori one more prize, as he uses his abilities to open a dimensional gateway and bring Ilpio back home. Ilpio is shocked to see that the entire city has become a wasteland, but Mori's just happy to see his big brother. Mu-Jin then asks Odin if he could help the refugees of the Sage Realm find a new home, considering that conflict might ensue if they remain in the human realm. Hearing this, one of the Oxen warriors protests that they still have to find their king Uma before leaving. However, Mu-Jin reassures him that they're going to send Uma to them with the help of the King of the Sage once she returns. Odin then agrees to Mu-Jin's request. Not too far away, Ryu expresses a bit of disappointment knowing that Mori, the Monkey King, is not coming with them. Mori apologizes to his subjects, telling them that he's not fit to be a ruler anyway. Besides that, he and Dae-Wi still have to look for Meera. However, he promises Ryu and the citizens of the Monkey Kingdom that he'll come visit them from time to time. He'll even give them one of Ilpio's fox speeds so that they can keep in touch. Finally, Mori tells Ryu that he and the rest of Oroguk's citizens don't need him anyway. According to him, they're a strong people, and Mori is more than confident in leaving them with establishing a new Monkey Kingdom on their own. The Monkey Warriors bid their farewell to Mori. After that, both Odin and Satan also say their goodbyes. Before leaving, though, Odin confides with Mu-Jin that R wasn't just borrowing the god's powers earlier, the boy was powerful enough to outright steal them. In any case, Odin comments on how interesting R has left the world. He then asks Mu-Jin if he planned all of this to happen, to which he answers that no. Everything that has happened until now is a matter of coincidences piling on coincidences. Odin and Satan then leave the human realm, but not before the Norse god asks Mu-Jin about the card he had under his sleeve all this time, the weapon that he didn't use against Okwang or the other gods. Odin asks if Mu-Jin either did not use it or if he couldn't. Mu-Jin says he couldn't, but Odin doesn't buy it. Still, he tells Mu-Jin that he'll be keeping an eye on what he'll do next while he's in the heavenly realm. At the same time, Kim pays his respects to Bong-Chim, But Taijin approaches and ruins the mood as he and Kim start to banter. Taijin ends up headbutting Kim as he says his final goodbye to his late rival. Meanwhile, Satan and Odin are traveling through the portal when the young devil asks his companion about the specter of the woman that appeared in front of Mori during their duel. Odin knows about this and prepares to tell Satan the whole story. Back in the human realm, Mori and his grandpa reunite and the boy calls out Taijin for crying. The two men tease each other and have some fun grandpa-grandson quality time. Eventually, Taijin asks Mori if he wants to stay with the old man so that they could live both of their days in peace. Mori agrees, and as he promised Taijin long ago, he introduces his best friends to the old man. Suffice it to say that Taijin couldn't be happier that his grandkid has found amazing companions like Dae-Wi and Meera. Ilpio then spots Taijin and recognizes him as his own grandfather's master and the creator of Renewal Taekwondo. A second later, Ilpio reverts to his human form and is absolutely tuckered out after the battles he's been through. All of a sudden, Sujin calls out Mori and kicks him in the face as a way of greeting him. Taijin thinks the two have become best buddies now, but Sujin does her best to hide that, as she goes her own way with Mansak and Ma Bora. Later, Taijin and Mu-Jin see each other and express how glad they are that each of them are alive. Mu-Jin then orders Mori to pick up all the shards of Yoi around the city, since he's the only one who could pick them up. Mori tries to use his powers to contract Yoi, but he's gassed out, so he promises Mu-Jin that he'll fix everything after he gets some rest. We then find out that some of the God of High School World Tournament's participants survived Ragnarok. These include Team USA's Anna, Team Argentina's Samuel, and Kyoichi, Sugihara, and Midori of Team Japan. All the members of Team Vatican also managed to survive the encounter, but they express their grief over losing so many comrades. On the other hand, Paul declares that they're going to have to retrieve the Holy Grail from Mu-Jin soon. Meanwhile, Mu-Jin asks P for a status report and we find out the extent of the war's damages. P reports that none of the judges lost their lives, but only 25% of their regular agents survived. On the other hand, their allies from the Vatican lost half of their fighting force. As for the total global population, P reports that more than half have been injured. We then find out that Seoul eventually started efforts to rebuild the ruined city. In the present, Mu-Jin calls for everyone to take a moment and pay their respects to everyone who lost their lives from the war, like Mori Huey, Unyo, and Bong-Chim. After paying their respects, P informs Mu-Jin that they've now entered the third phase of their grand plan, as he takes point and orders his men to provide aid to the citizens of the city. He then approaches Kim and Q, telling the loan shark that he'll surely pay his debt with interest, while promising Q that he no longer has to worry about money from here on out. Q asks exactly how Mu-Jin plans on fulfilling these promises, and we get the big reveal about Phase 3 of his plan. Mu-Jin is running for president. He then excuses himself and tells the two men that he has one last order of business to attend to. Meanwhile, Taijin and Mori continue to bond when Mu-Jin approaches. He bows before Taijin and thanks Mu-Jin for playing a huge role in inspiring him and bringing independence to humanity. But Taijin knows Mu-Jin is a weasel, so he tells Mu-Jin to just go and stop trying to spy on him. He and Mori then walk away, as the two talk about how awesome it is that they're now going to be living together. At the same time, we see Mu-Jin grabbing his crucifix pendant as it lights up. Now, remember when he told Q and Kim that he had one last thing to attend to as part of his plans? Well, we hope you're ready for this, because Mu-Jin backstabs Taijin and suddenly impales the old man with his bare hand. Mu-Jin lets Taijin know that this is revenge for defeating him 17 years ago during the Six's battle with Taijin. To Mu-Jin, killing the old man is the last step he needs in wiping the last remaining god off the face of the earth. Mori sees this and instantly prepares to transform into his Monkey King form. But he's surprised to find out that he has lost all of his powers when he spots the Holy Grail floating high up in the sky and sealing the Monkey King's abilities. That's right guys, Mu-Jin is a weasel and he planned all of this. Mu-Jin also reveals that he's been storing energy these past 17 years inside his crucifix pendant, all to unleash it at this very moment and use it to kill Taijin. Taijin is wounded but manages to break free from his attacker. Beck and Ilpio attempt to help the old man, but Mu-Jin uses his powers to subdue the two warriors. All of the judges then accost Ilpio and Beck, all but one, Q, who has no idea what's happening right now. Mu-Jin and Taijin then clash, as a bright wave of energy engulfs them. Meanwhile, Odin tells Satan about the time when the Monkey King was banished to India after the Great War. Back then, the Monkey King was joined by a companion named Samjang. After his exile, the Monkey King fought the Buddha Tathagata and lost. But then, he returned and challenged Tathagata to a rematch. Odin reveals that there was no way that the Monkey King could have defeated Tathagata in a fair fight during the second bout. We then find out that to defeat the Buddha, the Monkey King literally ate his companion Samjang, allowing him to absorb Samjang's strength and ultimately beat Tathagata. Back in the human realm, a devastating explosion occurs right where Taijin and Mu-Jin have clashed. We then turn the clock back to the moments leading up to Taijin and Mu-Jin's climactic clash. Up until this point, Mu-Jin makes us believe that his main target is the old man, since he's basically a god walking among men because of his martial arts prowess and legendary reputation. However, Mu-Jin reveals that the only reason he's attacking Taijin is to remove him as an obstacle and ultimately hit his primary target, Jin Mo-Ri. That's because when Mu-Jin referred to the last god in the world, he was actually talking about the Monkey King. Mu-Jin tells Taijin that this is now the age of humans and gods like Mori have no place in it. He even lets Taijin know that it was him who made Mu-Jin realize that humans had the capacity to become even greater than gods when he defeated the Six 17 years ago. In the present, we find out that Mu-Jin has successfully taken out Taijin and gets ready to dispose of Mori afterwards. In one last effort to save his grandson, Taijin channels all of his remaining strength to hit Mu-Jin with a powerful kick before he could kill Mori. But in the end, Taijin falls, as he tells Mori to stay alive and not hate humanity even after this. We then get another flashback to thousands of years ago, back when the Monkey King reawakened after losing his first fight against Tathagata. It turns out that Samjang and their two other companions, Baji and Mu-Jin, were also attacked during the ensuing chaos. Baji and Mu-Jin died because of this, while Samjang was brought to near death. Before passing on, however, Samjang told the Monkey King to eat her body so that he could avenge them. According to Odin, eating Samjang allowed the Monkey King to remove the seals that the gods placed on him after losing the Great War. In the end, he used this power to take out Tathagata during the rematch. He then tells Satan that the Mori that he fought earlier was the same Monkey King, someone much more different from the one that he and the other gods defeated during the Great War. It's also hinted that the ghost that Mori saw during his fight with Satan might very well be Samjang's soul living inside him. That's not where Odin's story ends though, because he also has one dark prophecy that he tells the young devil. In it, he states that the Monkey King was betrayed by the gods before, but now he's destined to be betrayed by humanity. Not only that, but the prophecy says that the Monkey King will fail to protect the people closest to him yet again. God of High School then goes for a time skip, moving the clock forward 17 years in the future. Seoul has become a wonderful, large, and rich city again. A random child and his grandfather are walking along its streets. Eventually, the kid points to a gigantic pillar looming over the horizon. We find out that this same pillar is none other than Yoi. The grandfather tells the child that the pillar appeared before he was born. More importantly, we find out from this old man that the people of South Korea now believe that the pillar is a trace left on their land by villains who tried to conquer the world 17 years ago. Basically, the Monkey King has been branded as a monster after the events of Ragnarok. And you know who started this smear campaign? It's none other than Park Mu-Jin, who has since become the president of South Korea. Now we hope you're ready for this, because God of High School has gone and turned its world upside down after the 17-year time skip since Ragnarok. In other words, we're in for a whole host of status quo changes and reveals both big and small. It all starts inside a place called the Memorial Center, a museum detailing the history of the war that happened between the Heavenly Realm and Human Realm 17 years ago. We see a tour guide guiding a group of kids around the center, and it's here that she introduces us to these new bombshells, starting with the new version of the Six. First, we find out that Judge O has been promoted as the first member of this new Six. There's also the minor reveal where we get confirmation that Judge O is male. But more importantly, Judge O has become such an icon in South Korea, as people know him as the Double Dragon, the only person who possesses the most number of these mythical beasts in the history of the world. The next bombshell that gets dropped on us is that we find out that Ilpio has also become a member of the Six. In the present, he's become renowned for being a hero during the war and a powerful warrior who can balance martial arts and borrowed power. We see that Ilpio has established a martial arts school too, dedicated to his family's Samsu Taekyon style. On a darker note, we also discovered that his relationship with Mu-Jin's government might not be too copacetic, given the fact that they're keeping an eye on him. On the bright side, it seems that Ilpio has settled with Sunya during this time. Then we meet the third member of this new Six, and it's none other than Sujin. She might be a member of this prestigious group, but she also happens to be the leader of an anti-governmental organization called Baohei. Next, there's Kim, the fourth member. He has since become one of the richest men in the world, thanks to all the dirty money he got with secret help from the government. Right now, Kim is approached by a green-haired man. He wonders what he's doing here now that this guy in front of him is rich. We find out that this same guy is Judge Q, who has also become wealthy after Ragnarok after the government helped him establish a bakery business. In fact, he's become richer than Jason John had ever been in the past. But unlike Kim, Q spends most of his time and money supporting the community instead of hoarding his wealth. He also has a reputation for being thrifty after living in poverty for so long. And at this moment, he has arrived in front of Kim to challenge the man to a duel and take his place in the Six. Now, if you thought that those reveals are big, wait until you find out about the fifth member of the Six. This man rests on the side of a hill somewhere around the city at present as a hooded man approaches him. The hooded guy kneels and reports that their observations have not yet borne fruit. The man then stands up and tells his subordinate to look somewhere else. And this same man happens to be none other than Han Dae-Wi, who is now known as the Sage of the East. On top of that, we also get another minor reveal that Xiao Chen is still serving him and she's still looking as young as ever. More importantly, we discover that Xiao Chen's power levels have been significantly reduced ever since she stopped receiving injections of vital energy the way she did 17 years ago. Xiao Chen approaches Dae-Wi and he asks her to report about what's happening in the West. She tells him she's had no luck with her mission yet. Back in the West, we see that former Knox priests Axley and Drake, as well as Judge T, have joined Mandok as part of Meera's Neo-Nox. Like Xiao Chen, Mandok has also lost his strength after the events of the war from 17 years ago. And as for Meera, well, she's the final member of this new version of the Six, who is now known as the Witch of the West. In the meantime, Neo-Nox's National Homeless Association and Nox factions are having an argument with each other. We then find out another big bombshell of a revelation from Mandok, as it turns out that there's now a world government running nearly every territory in the world. It's currently the strongest political power on Earth, but it's not uncontested. The world government still has to contend with Dae-Wi's eastern power and Meera's western power. To complicate things, Su-jin's Bao-He has also established itself as a newly founded rising superpower in the world. During Neo-Knox's meeting, Mandoc reveals that the West is weaker than its two other rivals, the East and the world government. However, he suggested absorbing Bao-He's territory, which would then allow them to be able to match the East's strength. He then proposes this to Meera and asks her to make a decision. But that's not the real kicker here, because we find out that aside from being a monarch and a member of the Six, Meera also now has a young son who eerily resembles Dae-Wi. Somewhere else, we find out that Su-jin presides over Bao-He with the help of 3 lieutenants, namely Mansak, Ma-Bora, and Gyeom-ji. In a different part of the world, we find out that Baek has become a billionaire genius scientist after acquiring 12 doctorates and establishing a company called Cao Electronics. His latest project is coming up with an interdimensional portal, presumably to search for Uma. But that's not the only problem he's dealing with, as we find out that the government is investigating him as a suspect concerning the Ragnarok issue. More reveals come when we discover that Jang Mi has become a lawyer and has founded a firm specializing in human rights cases. At the moment, we also find out that Poom Wang has just passed the bar exam and has started working with Jang Mi at the firm. It's revealed too that they're going to eventually establish the Jang and Jin law firm, where they would help a lot of people defend themselves against false accusations concerning the Ragnarok War. And if you're wondering, yep, Poom Wang and Jang Mi are still a couple. Meanwhile, Gamdo and Hyun-dan have taken up Na Bong-Chim's legacy and have opened up a practice, helping the citizens of the city with their late master's teachings. In fact, the two of them have achieved such a degree of mastery in the discipline that they are now in line as the next divine doctors. In the 17 years since Ragnarok, we also get to discover that Team USA's Anna has become a famous movie star. Then, Team Macedonia's Alex and Violetta have given birth to a whole bunch of kids. On the other hand, Team Japan's Sugihara has become a full-fledged Kyokushin karate master, as he teaches his martial art to a new generation of warriors. Meanwhile, Midori continues her duties as a shaman. As for Kyoichi, we find out that he and Team Argentina's Samuel have become agents working for the world government. Back in the Memorial Center, the tour guide then introduces the group of kids to the former members of the Six, such as Eunyo and Jason John. Then, of course, there's Han Riang and Bong-Chim. Each of them have gone down in history as heroes due to everything they've done for the world. The tour guide hypes up the kids when she introduces the last member of the old version of the Six, Mu-Jin. And it's here that we discover that Mu-Jin has pretty much created a cult of personality for himself, as he revised the history books to brand himself as a war hero during Ragnarok, a former Six leader, and gave himself the title as Korea's 5th special human cultural asset. Then there's also the fact that Mu-Jin has become president of the world for 17 years now. Inside his chamber, we see that Mu-Jin has gotten noticeably old, as he asks his chief secretary, Judge P, for a report regarding the results from the latest title match of the Six, a bout that would determine if one of its members is going to be replaced. Particularly, Mu-Jin and Judge P are referring to the bout between Q and Kim. P tells Mu-Jin that this is the 9th time that Q has challenged Kim for his spot in the Six, and, guess what? Q has finally managed to defeat Kim this time. This makes Q the newest member of the Six, replacing Kim. Mu-Jin then wonders if Q won because he got stronger after all these years, or if Kim had just gotten weaker like Mu-Jin himself. Mu-Jin then asks P about Yoi. It turns out that the pillar in the middle of the city is just half of the Monkey King's magical staff and that its other half is still missing. The tour guide then explains that all the countries in the world united under Mu-Jin Park right after Ragnarok, which explains how he's able to hold on to power for this long. From there, all the territories under the world government then prospered under his rule. In the Memorial Center, a kid asks the tour guide who started the Great War 17 years ago. And it's here that we find out the extent of Mu-Jin's treachery. Since the end of Ragnarok, Mu-Jin and his world government spread word that Jin Tai-Jin and Jin Mo-Ri were the masterminds behind the attack, saying that Mori was the leader of the demon army that attacked humanity. In addition to that, we find out that Baek, Ilpio, Su-jin, Meera, and Dae-Wi have been branded as Mori's co-conspirators. And even though they're members of the Six, each one of them is either on trial or wanted by the world government for war crimes. Somewhere else in the city, we also discover that borrowed power has become a common practice among the people of Seoul and presumably the whole world, as a couple of delinquents get in a fight using their respective abilities. Meanwhile, a male student in the same school sleeps inside the classroom beside a bag carrying something long. Back inside Mu-Jin's chamber, the president of the world suspects that Jin Mo-Ri is still alive out there somewhere, given that the Yoi pillar in the middle of the city is still standing. So he gives his agents, such as Judge Q, Kyoichi, and Samuel, to hunt Mori down and execute him on sight. But not everybody shares the same love and adoration for Mu-Jin in this new world order. A random cameraman does interviews with the likes of Dae-Wi of the other 6 members about this. And it's here that we get to find out that there's brewing tension under the peace that the world government has enforced since the end of Ragnarok. Dae-Wi tells the camera that if you witnessed what really happened during Ragnarok, there's no way that you'd consider Mu-Jin as a special human cultural asset. On the other hand, Ilpio takes a more neutral stance and says that Mu-Jin might sort of be a sinner and a terrorist, but he's all the world has right now. Meera stays quiet and refuses to give an answer, while Q refrains from giving any further comment. As for Su-jin, she simply tells the cameraman to stop filming or she'll kill them. And it's not like these members of the Six are the only ones who know the truth about what happened in the past. As we soon discover, a random kid asks his grandma why she's praying to the Yoi pillar in the middle of the city, and she tells him that its owner is the true hero who saved the world all those years ago. In fact, there are actually people all over Seoul who make their own respective pilgrimages to the Yoi pillar to pay their respects to its rightful owner. Meanwhile, we found out that Dae-Wi, Ilpio, Meera, Q, and even Judge O unanimously agree in private that if there's one real special human cultural asset, it's got to be Jin Mo-Ri. We then see wanted posters of Mori plastered around the city as the same hooded student we saw sleeping earlier walks past them. The boy's carrying what looks like a Q bag on his shoulder. He turns towards the readers and he resembles none other than a familiar martial artist with the power of a legendary Monkey King. And there you have it, guys. That's the third and final part of God of High School's Ragnarok Mega Arc. Thanks for sticking with us. We hope you loved this video and would love to know what you thought about God of High School's story so far. Please don't forget to give us a like, share, and subscribe to our channel to be the first to see all our upcoming releases. We genuinely love and appreciate your support. As always, we'll see you next time. You guys have a great day.